Well, no, I thought the articles that you had sent me though were fantastic though, so it was
Thank you,
great.
thank you.
I
I was
didn't get through the interview with Anon though because like I saw the first link about scale and then I started
yeah,
reading that archive
yeah.
thread and I was like, damn, this is really good. But hello, welcome everybody to our 6th episode of the Digital Archipelago. Here we are, and how are you all doing? Welcome, welcome. How are you,
Welcome.
Gio?
I'm all right. Like I said, my ankle is feeling better. I sprained it on Monday, but no, I'm doing good, man. I have a lot of content coming. Sorry, I'm just distracted with trying to send out the automatic posts of like get in
This
here.
is yeah, I know I do that too, but
Yeah,
I have it
but
scheduled with on desktop. I would love Twitter more, and that's a terrible thing to say, but I would love Twitter more if I could schedule my tweets on my phone
yeah, I
instead of
know.
just desktop.
No,
It'd be
yeah.
great.
Oh, I should schedule it. But no, yeah, I mean we both have live streams coming up and content. And what is this? See, I usually like the bubbly. I get this blue menu stuff. It's a Canadian thing, seltzer water. No, I had an idea for an intro where I was going to sing the Blurry by Puddle of Mud about Trump. Like, can you take it all away? Like, can you take it all away?
Oh man,
It's the
you're
yeah.
you had this post in your Telegram, and then all of the comment section was filled with Francis E. Deck rants, and I was just like, if there was a guy I would want as my intro, I would
Yeah.
take a snippet from there and sample it and put that as the intro.
Go intro with that.
Yeah.
I have friends that could work something up. How does AA do his intro? How do you do that in StreamYards?
Everyone's got a video, so
Yeah,
I would imagine an uploaded video file, and that's how they do it. I
yeah.
do that with the Sunday stream, but I mean, no, it was actually funny because I was listening actually to that like collection of rants of his on YouTube.
That was made by Doc Bratton.
Yeah,
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 and but also right on Telegram, there's a whole channel for Temple OS that's sort of just dedicated to like Terry Davis, and then I just thought like the way that this sort of sphere of the internet, this sort of sphere of politics, like creates its own like digital martyrs out of these people, right? Like in a lot of ways, there's still very Christian essence to it because it's just
Oh
like
yeah.
martyrdom, right? What does it do? It helps convert people to the faith. It helps bring people to understand the deepening of it, why people are committed to what they do. And it's just like there's whole pages and channels dedicated to people like Francis C. Deck, dedicated to people like Terry Davis, all
Hmm.
the wonderful posts yesterday about our boy Sky King, who's been now 4 years now.
Yeah, I
May his
can't
memory
believe
be
it.
eternal. And it just makes me think, right? Like that we have a very strange way of bringing these people in. These sort of you would almost consider them anti-heroes today because they stood against time,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and we bring them all together in that sense. And I think that it's kind of interesting. And the if we didn't collect these people or find them to be these archetypical anti-heroes that like stood against the test of time, either whether it's the worldwide gangster communist government or running over the CIA, right?
Yeah.
It's what they are. They bring people to understand why these people are committed, whether or not they were mentally ill or not. Maybe some of them were, but
Well, Francis
well,
C. Deck was clinically mentally ill, but
oh
I mean,
yeah, oh yeah.
it's very funny you mentioned that because it's the fourth or fifth anniversary of Sky King.
It's the
2018.
fourth, yeah,
The fourth. Wow, I
yeah.
can't
Him
believe it.
and Sky King and Terry Davis both a day apart. It's been 4 years.
You know what's funny is that one of my most successful paintings were the two I did with Sky King. And my life was different in 2018. I was in a very, not a very good place, health wise or otherwise. And as much as I gripe about the previous podcast I was on, it did give me the opportunity to like really extend, because for years I was always a lurker on YouTube and I kind of like resented it. I was like, oh, I'm an actual intellectual. I'm a writer. Okay. I'm not not a YouTube. My God, those people, they're cults really. No, but yeah. So 2018, I was completely different, and the Sky King, Rich Russell thing happened, and I think that I remember my former editor, who I shall not. It's pretty notorious in these spheres. I'm not going to name names, but if my previous flagship Thermometer magazine, you know the
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
he said that for the first time ever, there was an anti-hero on the E-right that wasn't like either a G-word idol maniac or someone that was a mass spree, you know what?
Yeah.
So it's like for the first time, he wasn't like a dictator. He wasn't like a Saint Raj figure. You know, he was someone that I think took his sort of existential and despair into his own hands with an awareness of what young men face in the modern world, especially of a certain socio-political and demographic, without saying it, demographic disposition, and the fact that the media had to censor his final message. I think that Rich Russell. I mean, he's polarizing the extent that people think that, oh well, why'd you check out because you're like a you're a coward and all that. I remember that was one response I got. I mean, the minority, but like it was there.
Yeah.
I think that as much as I condemn checking out, if you will, to use the Stardust word, I guess whatever sunset and hero. I think that the way in which he chose to go out without sort of like causing I mean, as much as we meme these figures, right?
Yeah.
You have to realize like someone like Raj and other ones, I mean, they caused immense amount of nihilistic despair with their sort of final acts. But I think that for the first time, and also Terry Davis as well, that I think that as tragic as their life was, as exemplary as their life was, they ultimately left, I think, a positive note. But I think Terry Davis less so because Terry Davis, the way he died was frankly tragic.
Oh
And
yeah.
the way that he went was, I think, I understand the frustrations of people that live with, a child or relative with mental health issues. I understand, especially schizophrenia. But I think that a lot of people in Terry's life failed him, and a lot of people in Rich Russell's life failed him. And I think that they are testaments ultimately to the hypermodern condition and the fact that they can be immortalized, even if it's sort of like the memification of their immortalization and the way that something positive can be produced through the channels of memification that we usually dispense, like shocking messaging and lionizing very polarizing figures, to say the least, whether it's Elliot and or Anders, who, or any
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
Paul, let's call it the 4chan Paul pantheon.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
but the memification of it, because like yesterday, right? Everyone who had ever written about Russell had put out their essays again. You had posted your really well done paintings about it, and I was just like, all of this is just digital iconography for like despondent white guy martyrs,
oh yeah,
and like the memification, like there was like this really weird fash wave Terry Davis video that kind of came out that
yeah,
was just like sort of lionizing him about like the temple of God, that and all of his temple OS stuff. And it was just like, it's almost like modern day veneration. It's modern day iconography in a lot of essence,
oh
because
yeah,
it's like what we talked about on the show with Ryan Gosling. All the why do people do the whole like he's just like me, even if he's not someone you want to emulate? Because those
yeah.
archetypes speak to a millennial, and now I think Zoomer as well, degree of despondency, that even if you go out as the anti-hero, you go out on your own terms, right? Everyone
Exactly.
wants like that. Like that's why Drive is so timeless, right? Like just a real human being. That's what everyone wants to do.
It's funny. What's with the Fez? Well, it's to protect. It's to cover the Norwooding. No, it has an esoteric meaning to it. No, I think it's true. It's and I noticed Philip Daniel, he completed one of his suits. I will check. I'll check in with that Philip Daniel. But no, I do think that it's quite pertinent. I mean, the whole point of this episode, we were talking about what motivates us to write and what motivates us to carry on, because two landmark things happened like last week or this week. Is it this week? Yeah. I mean, time, like when the happenings flow, I mean, the time is just immaterial. You can never really assess it. But two major happenings, two major blows to, I think, what I would say is the originary character of America has really taken a hit. Um, And I think I guess starting off with the politics portion of our stream. I know, Prude, you're probably burnt out with you had that stream with Oren recently.
Yeah. Everyone did their take that day with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Mar-a-Lago shakedown.
The sacking of Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's 1453 all over again.
Yeah.
The walls of Mar-a-Lago have fallen. Ring the bells.
Oh my God. I think that what's funny though is that to end the note about Terry Davis and Rich Russell, I think that it is very much a modern immortalization of these figures. And I think that Terry Davis, the way I look at him, I tweeted about this, is that he very much is I would say an outsider artist, the way that he approached creating an operating system. I mean, if you look at like the official art world people that use the internet or use digital technology, specifically the first wave of them, like Namjoon Pike and other ones, like Terry Davis, in my opinion, is up there. I mean, the fact that he has the sort of same features as outsider art that you find in places like the Appalachians, very much Southern Gothic, or people who were sort of like religious nut jobs that had pieces that couldn't be fit into the context of traditional ritual. And so they found a home in the art world. There was this one artist. Well, he was an artist. He was sort of like, he created his own religion. I think he was in Harlem, and he ended up making junk, these very elaborate statues and altar pieces out of junk that he would collect over years. And I believe he had some kind of like thing about aliens too, if I recall. Don't quote me on it, but I was watching a documentary on him. And the Terry Davis, I think Temple OS fits that same character. You really can't place it within either the context of an operating system or religiosity or something of that nature, even though it, in his mind, it was divinely inspired. But anyways, what was I going to say about the politics? Okay, so two things. The Alex Jones trial and the sacking of Mar-a-Lago. When you really think about it, Prudent Big Chungus. That's, oh my God. Yeah. Anyways, Big Chungus.
There you go.
See, that just threw me off right there. Ricky John Big Chungus. Oh my God. Anyways, Prude. Yeah. Are you tired, Prude?
I love it when don't you love it when people ask? You look tired. It's the most passive aggressive office thing ever. No, I'm perfect. I'm perfectly fine. It's like it's been 110 all all day today, and
it's bad here too. So oh boy. Anyways, the two. What I wanted to say is that in my mind, and I know this is crazy. Okay, I know this is crazy. Alex Jones represents, in my opinion, going along this train of folk artists. He really is sort of like a folk mystic of the American time period. There's multiple strains of Americana run through Alex Jones. Same with Trump, right? And I think that Alex Jones embodies sort of I would even say a particular form of religiosity in America, one that even is sort of quasi-Gnostic. When Alex Jones, I wanted to write this article. Maybe I will, but maybe when we cover the Morgoth article, he sort of inspired me to revisit the notes I had, where I wanted to write this article called "The Spiritual War of Alexander Emmerich Jones." When you listen to him, he is Gnostic in a way, like the way he talks about the God of this world wants us to be destroyed. The God of this world wants us not to have children, wants us to be genetically damaged, so on and so forth. And opposed the God of this world to the creator, and a lot of his sort of quasi-cosmicism type of thinking around certain issues. The Joe Rogan interview, for instance, the one that has the 14 million views, that one is like really illustrative of his unique brand of Gnostic Christianity that is embedded in, I would say, the tradition of uniquely American end times biblical prophecy that really exploded in the 1980s. Hal Lindsey's Late Great Planet Earth, for instance. But the fact that like they persecuted him, and I was listening to the Duran stream with Barnes, what's his name, Robert Barnes?
Yeah, Robert Barnes.
Yeah, about how like this was a total hit job. Like they violated even constitutional amendment. Like, you know, I'm not well versed in American legal system. I would take his word for it. But you know, but the Trump thing though is also another sort of I believe it was, I forget who was on Twitter. I think it was either Barack Obama or it might have been I forget who was on Twitter. I have to look it up. It may have been Barack Obama. It may have been Echo Chambers that said, like, you know, basically the sort of political rivalry in America is dead. That in essence, now we know that the federal government is sort of weaponized in a very specific way against the opposition. And there really is no outer party. I mean, so the whole Moldbug thesis is out of whack. The outer party is becoming illegal the way that T77 says that genuine right-wing thought in America is essentially illegal now. And Trump, I think, embodies a particular postmodern strain of that image of Americana that's sort of like the last gasp of the, let's call it, quasi-futurist machismo 80s throwback, implicitly, you know, Indo-European strain of America. And, you know, Obama was, again, another postmodern version of a rival picture of America. And a lot of people speculate that really this administration is basically, you know, being run by the same people in that administration. So I don't know, Prude, what do you think of that? Like, you're sorry, I'm just rambling. Right
now. No, you're fine. Wanted you to get your whole take in there. No, yeah. Like the Jones trial, I had said a few things when I had seen clips. I watched what Ben Braddock had posted about it, and I mean, I have some background in law. I mean, I worked as a paralegal during undergrad, and it was just a total shit show by all metrics, right? And then you have that famous like paneled clip about, you know, like what you think is the truth isn't really, you know, what you believe to be the truth isn't always the case. And the activist judge shutting her down. I mean, to me, it just felt like two things. Like, you know, this is really the formalization of all criminalization of political opposition. I mean, you can say what you want about Alex Jones, whether he's, you know, just containment or just entertainment. I mean, he does get a lot
or
of
he's
people,
a shill of certain powers.
Yeah. And, you know,
well, yeah.
But I mean, whatever your take may be on him, I mean, he does possess a certain manic right-wing male energy that it had a lot of places to go there. And I mean, InfoWars, for better or for worse, still contained a lot of writers. A lot of people came out of InfoWars. A lot of people did all that. And at the same time, you know, it also made me think, because then all the background info on the judge came out, you know, all of her political activism, all what she stood for. And it just reminded me of like BAP and his, you know, that bit in Bronze Age mindset about how the future camps of the world will be ran by people with, you know, certain types of lesbian haircuts that are just going to, you know,
young Martin Sheen face.
Yeah, with the young Martin Sheen faces. Yeah, like basically that's what it made me think of. But I mean, that and then the raid, I don't know. A lot of information still coming out. There's some that are saying that like they kind of knew beforehand that the you know, raid took place while Trump was out, which if that's the case, that's the case. I mean, even if, right, political theater or not. And I mean, today the Merrick Garland had to give a press conference saying that the FBI works in protection and for the defense of the American people, which no one buys into that.
Oh God! Oh,
you know,
he said, "I will not let the work of these agents be, you know, insulted." And it's like, you know, like my God.
I mean, to me, right, like it's just we're sort of accelerating now at the point of like legitimacy can be thrown out. But I mean, there's also a thing about Trump that represents, and this was something that I kind of saw stick out in that Robert Stark article that you sent me, which was like really good. Like I really liked it. And he sent me a few things via DMs to read before, and like he's an interesting thinker to say the least. I like how his brain works, and he's got this bit about like archaeofuturism and like wanting an alternate future where like Trump kind of embraces that on a new generational scale. Like a lot of his donor base were probably moguls or rich guys in the 1980s, but at the same time, like the younger crowd that is like really all into Trump, they look into this like archaeo-futuristic style of like the 80s Trump Taj Mahal, the Atlantic City grandeur and owning
Yeah.
New York, or even the fact that people will go out of their way to like watch Home Alone 2 or find old like Pizza Hut commercials, or
Oh God,
just
yeah.
where he's featured in it. Like there's this alternate future where like this is the case, where everything is aligned, where this man is meant to be the president. And it has this bit to it that I thought Carl
Can you take
Benjamin,
it all away?
right. But I mean, when Carl Benjamin and the Distributists were streaming, they had Carl made up a really good point that like there's a narrative arc that longs to be completed, like the return of the House of Trump.
Right.
But they don't want that to happen. And I mean, Michael Anton wrote the best piece on this, weeks before the raid. They will not let him back in.
Yeah, it's very much like Stone Cold circa 99, I want to say, where they like kicked him out and like Vince didn't want to let him back in, but then of course he had the arc where him and The Rock in WrestleMania, that was like the last, like that promo package brings a tear to my eye with My Way by Limp Bizkit. But no, it's very much like I mean, the fact that Trump was involved in MMA and pro wrestling, that very much like cements the arc, the narrative of like he is a king that's been deposed. He wants to come back. He wants to complete his sort of like face turn, if you will, or well, heel turn actually. I mean, but Trump is never a true heel. He very much is like the anti-hero, the way that a Stone Cold is, or the way that I guess in New Japan you'd say Tetsuya Naito or whoever. Like he has that energy, like where he will play dirty, but you got like even the people that hate him, maybe not anymore. I mean, of course the people that hate him really hate him, of course, but like I mean, there's something about Trump. There's something about that sort of like anti-hero energy that embodies the sort of the excess and the grandeur of that particular time period in America during the American century. And now that we're sort of like now that that's coming to a close, and something else more hideous like is being propped up, I think that the future, I mean, looks pretty looks pretty bleak in terms of the way in which a declining American empire can recognize its own self-image, I think. Because the image that the people currently in power have is monstrous and destructive. And I think, that's, I was listening to, because you and Matt both recommended it, the James Kirkpatrick stream with AA recently.
Oh, it was so good.
Yeah. There was a point where he said, and maybe I'll bring him on Content Mind. I think we're mutuals actually. But there was a point he was saying about how like the picture looks bleak in terms of like, okay, the Zoomers are not the basis generation. When the Boomers decline, when the Boomers finally, have the pillow moment, I don't know what we're gonna do, because they sort of like are the only voting bloc left that hasn't been affected with infected with the sort of new picture of the West, if you will.
Well, yeah, because they're the last ones that can remember a world before like the 1965 consensus that has fundamentally changed America. And
Exactly.
I mean, that stream was also good. And to me, it's just like all of these, these sort of like rhetorical or dialectical snares that are out there with politics. Just, I'm sort of reminded of a lot of like just, early church persecution in a lot of ways, like looking for, making sure that the bread is stamped. So you're knowing that you're not like being lowered into something. Like, I feel like a lot of that is coming back in some instance because, here we are reading up on this theory, reading up on the past. I mean, I was just having some shits and grins on Telegram talking about Thomas Jefferson. And I was like, yeah, I own a copy of Virginius Dabney's, like the Jefferson scandals, talking about how he didn't actually like do anything to Sally Hemings and whatnot. Like, all these things come to mind, and it's just sort of interesting that like we're going to be in a position where that's the case. Like, you have to really do it. It really is going to be based upon your network because we are in a time now where we're stuck with choices that we have that may not be the best, but there's certainly no messianic figure.
Right. And I think Alex Jones to an extent and Trump to an extent did embody those messianic figures in a way. I think that well, Trump especially. I mean, Trump carries with him a very powerful religiosity, especially among the boomers. I mean, they truly believe in Trump. But I think that what's interesting, like to bring up what James Kirkpatrick said, is that what are we to do then in a world that is fundamentally hostile and that the algorithms of public information and discourse are essentially rigged against us? And how can we operate? Like, what can we create that can break through? And will there be receptive eyes and ears to, to carry on those values and messages and content? I think that that's a very interesting and unique challenge. Because I mean, to just totally blackpill, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, the Zoomers are not in a very good state, as we all know. And
No.
I mean, us millennials, I think the problem is that millennials have sort of resigned to history, and we're sort of ready to take on the trash bin. We're ready to get cleared out,
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing though, is that like the millennials that are ready for the trash bin, I think comes from, like we've talked about before, like that you were considered a generation of a certain epoch, the coming of the age, this brand new time, right? And all of a sudden, like that didn't come true. Like instead, you got a recession, 2 wars in the Middle East, and none of that, foretold, you're special and you can make it. And those who kind of clung to those ideas are willing to rebel against the system. And I think that that's why they work so hand in hand with the regime. But I mean, for the rest of us, right? Like there is. And that's again to reference Morgoth. Morgoth wrote a great essay about millennials that I thought was really good, because he's just like, Gen X doesn't have that like generational mindset, right? Gen X doesn't come into a term until much later in
right.
I think he said 2002. And so
yeah, the MTV generation.
The MTV, right. And he's just like, they don't think about that or conceive or have a self-perception within that kind of context, which is very important in that regard. And so we are in a weird space in politically speaking, and I find that whatever is to come next, right? Like I think James's advice about really you need to have something out there that is not explicitly political, and you've got to do it now. Which I mean, I've been trying very much to focus a lot of my attention on doing that, both with my church or just making friends and whatnot. But I mean, I think if there's anything that I've done in 2022, it has just been like. At the end of the day, if you're a terminally online person, you should probably look at that black screen when you like turn the phone off at night and right before you go to bed, and you see that face staring back at you, realize that you still have things to do with your life. You have to live it.
Yeah. There was someone that DM'd me recently about this younger person, a Zoomer, and trying to. It's very it's very interesting when you look at it through that lens. I think that it's very interesting when we can sort of comment upon and create things, and like you were saying, writing through the bad times,
writing through decline.
Writing through the decline, yeah. I think that it's interesting because we're entering a period of like extreme disenfranchisement, and I think that we have to think and act like historic dispossessed and subaltern peoples, but not in the same way, because you don't want to sort of the same claims to grievance and the politics and the social networks that come about through that are not available to us on the political right. So I mean, I know we've memed this about South Africa, but I mean that's to say that, I mean, that is a possible future in North America. And I think that, it comes up in subtle ways, even like just the fact that, like here in Canada, I'll give you a good example. Down here where I live, like basically in the burbs, there you can't find construction workers who either, non-union or start their own company, even though they like fold like a house of cards after a while. Because of the housing market and the fact that every immigrant that this country lets in, they all go to the major 4 or 5 cities, right?
Yeah.
So there's a huge demographic bottleneck of just the labor force. And I think that it's indicative of the way in which the system is essentially rigged towards certain ends. And like, for example, like here in construction, like my old man, like we wouldn't have this problem if we were in the States. Unfortunately, as terrible as it is, the fact that you can get cheap labor, from various South American illegal, migrants, like it's in Canada, the type of immigrant that comes here largely sticks to the big cities. And so therefore all of the sort of bread and butter industries, the hard industries, if you will, they either evaporate or people get too old who are small business owners and they, board up shop, or they dissipate to other companies and it's not the same. And so you have this huge problem in terms of labor and demographics. And it's like, I don't know, like, I mean, maybe America it's different because you do have a huge pool of largely illegal immigrants that can service these labor intensive industries. But countries like Canada, it's not the case. But that's just one example. I mean, America, of course, has different problems with their labor force. It just seems that the last 2 years has decimated that sort of a lot of the will that people had to be invested in like working and quote unquote contributing to the system. Because really, I mean, why would you want to contribute to the spiritually demoralizing system? I mean, it's as terrible as this sounds. I mean, I know this is going to sound crazy, but if you can find a way to live and to have a family and to live outside of the confines of the system and to like live on even like in a sort of like taking the Varg pill, living in a sort of quasi happy poverty, I think you should do it, in my opinion. I think you really.
I mean, yeah. I think so. I mean, yeah. I mean, there is a time and place for a lot of people.
Contribute to the system as little as possible if you can.
That's definitely definitely one avenue for it, right? And like I think that this is a point. I mean, it just depends on who you are and what you're called to or what you think you're good at. Because I mean, not everyone is meant to go get a master's or a PhD or a JD. Right. But I mean, a lot of how the system operates to screw you over is built upon credentialism. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, there is a desire to like check out and enjoy and enjoy the happy poverty and take up a trade. But at the same time, right, like whatever you're associated with is going to need lawyers. It's going to need guys that can draw up contracts. Like there is a point for both, and you need to have both.
No, I say go to university. Someone mentioned I know if you're subtweeting Scott Greer. I say go to university, but also contribute as little as possible. In fact, going to university is a net drain on this in some ways. So I encourage people to go to university, actually. Anyways, as a product of the university system myself. But sorry, go ahead, Brett. I interrupted.
Oh no, I mean, same here. Right, just you need both, right? In that regard. So, I wholeheartedly agree with the fact that you need both. And like that was something that I did write about. Was this? I called it taking the H because I wanted to I'd rather be humbled than take an L. And but I mean, I visited some friends of mine who were mutuals in another parish, and so I drove like 4 hours or so to see them, and they were living in what you would call like that happy poverty. Like they were on kid number 6. They, she homeschooled, he worked a manual job. They had chickens in the back. They were literally, they wasn't the world's best neighborhood, but by God, they had good friends. They took care of themselves, looked out for one another. And I was just like, that's, if you're happy and you've achieved it and you're not doing really anything to give these people a reason to go after you. I mean, it's a much more humble way of living rather than I think the often materialist, mindset that comes with being a part of the regime where you want to get noticed, you want to be seen, you want the exposure. And it's just like, no, these guys are living a much happier life than I am,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's always quite interesting. I forget who tweeted about it, about like like that's the sort of divide in the E, right? Is like urbanites like arguing with semi-urbanites about like should you go to college or university and like or should you go to the trades and like LARP this like Luddite fantasy. It's like I can see merits to both, but it is kind of interesting. It is sort of like a weird ghost dance because there really is no direction to like go into these institutions in a way. Because
no. I mean, like I live out in the I live out in the middle of nowhere, and it's just like unless you have good family ties or connections with like
Yeah.
intergenerational wealth, like it's very hard to get started and make yourself
Yeah.
successful out here. And those that do buy a small plot of land and they live out of like a truck or a tent for months and they like grow their own food. And I literally see that like right down the road. And it's nuts because that's how it is out here. And the other
Yeah.
thing is and this is the biggest point that like Greer is like absolutely right about, that
Yeah.
geographic divide does not matter as much when everyone is connected, but to the tentacles of the regime by the internet. I write about it like where if it doesn't matter that the kid can wear a cowboy hat and ride his horse to the local park or to the high school, but I mean if he's still using the same Zoomerisms and has a Zoomer perm, what's the point? Like
Yeah.
he's just as corrupted as someone in the city.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's funny because even a long time ago, a certain YouTuber said the same thing about the sticks are just as the the sticks are just as like polluted as like anywhere else. And it is kind of funny how like I think like the problem with the information age is that there is no refuse for like this sort of like the sort of truth regimes that are ostensibly your enemies. And it's I mean, yeah, it's I understand that's a huge part of like Scott Greer's point is that
I
it's
mean,
like
like you have to purposefully turn yourself off from that, almost in a neo-Luddite fashion, right? Like you
yeah.
got to be like all you got to be like Wendell Berry and just write like why you will not buy the computer and go for it. I mean, I know people that do. I mean, there are like 3 guys in my parish that have these phones called Light. They're these like little
Mm.
wallet-sized dumb phones that can only send email or text messages and receive calls, nothing else, no apps, no
Oh
nothing.
man.
And if you want to like put something on your phone, you have to literally connect it to a computer if you wanted to like upload a file or something from email. And I'm just like, but you have to go out of your way to do that. Whereas today, like you're inundated from it from the start. And I mean, like I'm more terrified about the people that have grown up with a tablet in front of their face because their mother didn't want to parent them while they were like driving through the going through the Walmart on a cart. Like that's something to be considerate about because as Juniper Tree says in chat, like yeah, everywhere has its own decay and you have to be
Mm.
adaptive to it in order to handle that problem.
Yeah, yeah. And so that is always like a persistent issue that we have. But I think like just the lack of like actually filtering into institutions and the defense mechanisms that these institutions have built up. I mean, I know Scott Greer has written an article recently. Maybe we should have also covered that one. But have you read it?
No, I have not. No.
It's in American Greatness.
Okay. I'll be sure to
Maybe I
read
should
it then.
skim it. Yeah. But yeah, I think like that's a huge barrier to overcome. But anyways, what
You
are
want to
we?
get to the first one then?
All right, all right,
Which
yeah.
one did you want to do? Morgoth, Stark, or the Parallax Optics one?
Well, I might as well start at Morgoth since we were always talking about Alex Jones.
That's true.
So
Let me go
yeah,
pull up Morgoth's essay
yeah.
then. I did not have him pulled up on my tabs. But yeah, no, I mean, so you read it and it inspired you to, his was
Revisit my
on,
thoughts on the matter. Yeah.
yeah, there we go. Thank you. It pays to home. Thank you. Alex's war review. Now I can put this up on stream. Hey, Morgoth, you're getting free publicity here. So share screen.
No.
Chrome tab.
One of these days I
Well,
gotta
I mean, this
talk
is
to Alex
behind a
anymore.
paywall, so I don't actually want to put the whole. Is this one free or not?
I thought it was free. I read it. So
Oh, okay. Then yeah, okay.
yeah.
Because Morgoth was kind enough to let me get behind the scenes on his, so I don't know what's behind the paywall and what isn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is his review, the documentary "Charting the Life and Times of Alex Jones." Where did you want to start?
So yeah, I mean, he doesn't do much of the actual like review of it. Yeah, but yeah, that paragraph. Alex Jones himself is a culture and ideological Rorschach test in the sense that we so it's the bottom paragraph.
No, okay.
In the sense that it will reflect your own ideological and cultural priors, grifter, gatekeeper, containment, meme, prophet, con man, lunatic, freedom fighter. He's all of the above, in my opinion. He's all of the above. I think like that's what I meant. I think that Alex Jones definitely is a creature of a particular type of American bullhorn man, that soapbox man, that really embodies a spirit or an undercurrent that was quite common back in the day, but has been carried over to the internet age. Was always baked into the Infowars, Cake, Truth, Justice, American Way. Spending team, yeah. So people don't know this, but I mean, I'm an old hat. I remember this back in the day. Uh, when I started listening to him around like 2011, Alex Jones was very much not like quote unquote coded as right wing as people think. He was sort of ambiguous with certain views. He was much more of the libertarian, anti-government bent, which he still is, obviously. But I think that, so yeah, this is the point that Morgoth was talking about. Philosophy and the occult Anglo-empiricists. I wonder, is Alex Jones an Islamo-Duganist? I don't know. No. Bertrand Russell, Thomas Malthus featured heavily in Jones's worldview as representing. Maybe I should do the Morgoth voice, as representing that I can't do.
I can't either.
The epitome of soullessness controlled the. No, I just sound like Paul Joseph Watson. I can't. Controlled technocrat teaching embodiment today by the United Nations. This puts Alex Jones at odds with the white nationalists who argue that Jones's safety valve, a Z word. And I remember, because, okay, for those who don't know the context, there was a debate back in the day between Alex Jones and a certain figure whose first name starts with David. And Alex Jones, I hate to say it, he kind of lost. Okay, it was about an influence of a certain nation somewhere, particularly in the Middle East. And Alex Jones. So then there was this conspiracy that Alex Jones was an agent of. Well, anyways, that's the context. So we don't sacrifice Prude's channel. So don't. So the whole. I remember he had the loose change people on. He had Ryan Dawson on about the Twin Towers. Maybe if you go down a little bit more. Okay. Oh, this is a good point. Any American progressive who became sympathetic to Jones via his anti-war stance were soon to be disappointed when Barack Obama came into office. And okay, for the context, again, this is trip down memory lane. Back in 2005, Alex Jones had this video where he wore a George Bush mask and a pitchfork, like one of those like kids, Halloween pitchfork. And he had like the devil horns on. And he said this line, I'll never forget. This is in 2005. He said, but we're going to put in a Democrat and he's going to do all the same things I do. And you're going to love it when they do it. All you Democrats that hate the Patriot Act, all you Democrats that hate the war, you're suddenly going to love it. And he had like his pitchfork. So he predicted the rise of Obama. In Morris from Jones explains that he found the mainstream right's critique of Obama stale and dated. Conservative movement painted Obama as a weakling and a bleeding heart who sell out America to its enemies. Instead, Jones attacked Obama on the premise that he was a deep state manifest, merely a puppet being, further strip America of its rights. So yeah, Obama was really a strong man behind the scenes. And it goes into the film. For Alex Jones, America's ideal, its people and its constitution are fundamentally sound in the source of good. So, okay, this is, I think, the critique of Alex Jones that I wanted to get into with you. The thesis that Jones has that America is at its heart a source of meaning and good and has a spiritual undercurrent that should be defended and as a platonic ideal that is being transgressed by whatever litany or whatever demon or ghoul or Gnostic demiurge that is attacking the Americana itself. And I wonder if that's a flaw in Alex Jones's thinking. I wonder if Alex Jones makes the typical boomer mistake of not seeing the sort of heart of I wouldn't say heart of dark. Yeah, maybe heart of darkness. The sort of like originary elements of the American experiment that has led us down this particular path. And I wonder if like that assessment, the way that Alex Jones sets up America in terms, in very, I would say stark spiritual terms, I wonder if that's a flaw in his thinking. I don't know if you have a different take, Matt. I don't know.
Oh, I mean, Jones is. I mean, I think everyone likes the. I always I like Jones's take for like his like Justin Bieber rant. I like his takes, especially when like Obama took office. He was just like, "You're going to get more of the same,"
Yeah.
and I mean, he was correct about that. But a lot of his language is always laced with deep spiritual and it's pseudo Christian, pseudo Gnostic. Like he's got that raw Americana sense of you know, essence of what it means to be, part of the country. And I mean, like a lot of people on the right, there is always the language of religion that comes with it. I mean, America was founded fundamentally on religious terms, right? I mean, both Anabaptists, Anglicans, Episcopalians. I mean,
Yeah.
sort of the post, the after effects of sort of the English, the Glorious Revolution and all that. And so, I mean, it has its problems. I know it does. I mean, in the same problem that kind of comes with anyone on sort of these political spheres, where it's just like, well, some of those ideas did get us to where we are, but at the same time, right? Like a lot of those ideas that got us to where we are did only in turn come from, in a lot of ways, by changing the fundamental morals and changing the fundamental principles of this. Like, I mean, Michael Anton, I think, is one of the better examples of this, right? Where he does view things in that sort of that spirit of 1776. And I think, but even Anton himself knows that we aren't the same men of 1776. We're not the same
Right.
men of 1789. We're not even the same men of 1814. And so, it's always his heart, I think, is in the right place when it comes to that, because I mean that is fundamentally a part of the American identity, especially even if
Right.
you are an old school, like, 'cause he's what, Gen X, right? He's like in his 50s now. So I
Yeah.
mean, like, he's definitely the kind of guy that embodied that. He kind of grew up. I'd imagine he saw Wharton Downey Jr. as a kid for sure.
Oh yeah.
And so, I mean, he grew up on an age of shock jocks and in sort of the late 80s, or coming of age, late 80s, early 90s, of the sort of American optimism of the world. And I mean, that still fundamentally shaped a lot of people, millennials especially. I, it has its problems. I know that it does. And we could spend a whole other episode talking about why there are some issues with it. But I mean, at the same time, America has always been a place of fundamental contradiction.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean that we have to live with those contradictions. Some of them are always unrecognizable in a lot of ways, and because those, and we don't ever reconcile those contradictions. So you end up creating a place that is so fundamentally foreign to what your ideals are, or you don't codify them not just with language, but also by a culture that you practice. So
Mhm.
anyone can then take up this so-called American mantle and then make it in their own image, which some would say that's exactly what America means to be. No, it's not. That's never really been a fundamental American thing. And that really is a post 65 thing that America has never, will probably never recover from. And whatever does come out of the, post Immigration Act of 65 is irrevocable.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, yeah, there's the spicy and religious takes about it. Yeah, I mean, it strikes to the heart of a lot of what I would say like heritage European Americans that have been here,
Mm.
prior to the 1920s and onward, and their progeny, because like that is sort of what America is that we, founded a place out of nothing. And it's always complicated because like you don't want to shit on your own place because this is your home. You grew up on it. I can't imagine
Yeah.
living anywhere else in the world. But it's also, it's adopted, I think, since the 20th century, a formulation of relativism that is really the problem. I think that
Yeah.
I'll wrap it up here. I've been ranting too long.
No, no, it's
I
okay.
think he speaks to the heart of a lot of issues that would get really any red-blooded American male going, especially if they're not like well read on the stuff that you see Oren or Charlemagne or myself talk about on a regular basis, right? He does speak to sort of your flyover state, tuned into the TV, bought into the black helicopters thing in the 90s, and that's evolved to today. I
Yeah.
just think that maybe the bigger flaw about him in that essence is that, yeah, it's great, and sometimes the show and calling men to action or calling men to do things is fine, but there's little introspection, and I think that that's sort of the
Right.
problem.
Right. I think, but there is this sort of reflective mode of Alex Jones lately, though. I think that I think he's grappling with his legacy currently because they're trying to sue him into the Stone Age. And I think that it's funny that you mentioned when you were talking there. I was thinking about how, the political right, especially in North America, is sort of like a land of extremes. There are two, like, I think, warring images of, I would say, North America, but let's face it, particularly the American people on the political right. Alex Jones, I think, embodies one of them, a more kind of older boomer version, where, the American people, like Morgoth was writing about here, is a source of good, should be preserved, is being corrupted by, and he lists cult groups, the globalists, the UN, the Chi-Coms, the other Z word. Of course, Alex Jones would never allude to the Z word, but but I think that there's that one picture of America as like the fighting spirit of America, the sort of like shining rock on the hill. Its people is of a particular European stock, and that, it has a Faustian spirit on its own. Then there is the other picture that I think is a rival picture of America on the political right, which is America is this hideous, dysgenic sewer, what does Bab call it? The global latrine. This like El Gablina, 56%. Everyone is fat, such as myself. Everyone looks ugly, such as myself. Everyone's terrible. Everyone is sort of like, bombarded with.
You're the true American, Gio, by being
exactly.
Canadian.
I'm spiritually American. This is why I have to move. So if the Claremont people or Peter Thiel wants to give me money, but I repeat myself. Anyways, no, but I think that America is like this land of genetic trash and like filled with endocrine disruptors, and American people look terrible and haggard, and the face of decline. But I think that Jolly says, so I think like those two extreme pictures of what the American people are, and especially in the political right. Of course, the political left, I wonder, I think they also have a particular divide. Although I think, I don't know, does it primarily lean to the negative? Sorry, to the negative, you think? Like, America's this evil, racist, white colonialist nation, or America's like, the mandate of, well, they don't believe in heaven, but you know what I mean, the mandate of heaven, that they have to spread progress throughout the world. So the political left in America also has that divide, I feel. But I mean, I don't know, maybe it's towards the negative more. Like, there is that version of America that I like Josh Neal in his new book. And by the way, the Content Minded episode went live yesterday with Josh Neal. So go to my channel. And go to Patreon, all that stuff. Like, there's that one particular ethnogenesis of like Obama America, which is like, you know what I mean? Like, that's sort of like the end result of the Immigration Act, the second quote unquote Bill of Rights, right? Then there is like very much the Alex Jones or Trump picture of the sort of waning originary picture of America, to at least to the political right, that's sort of trying to like fight for its place again. You know what I mean? I think that America definitely is at a war with itself in terms of its own self-image nowadays. And I think like no greater picture, no greater contrast than in someone like Alex Jones, who's been through different phases of like 20th century and 21st century America. And I think like even his earliest sort of broadcasts from the 90s onwards about the militia movement, about technological serfdom and so forth. I mean, those themes have carried through, but they've taken on the coloring, the character of the previous decades afterwards, from the 2000s with Bush, then during the Obama years where Alex Jones rose to prominence, now during the Trump era. The post-Trump era now, but I mean, who knows what's going to happen in 2024? I can't say post-Trump just yet. That's sort of like, anyways, I'm just ranting. Maybe if you go down a bit more.
Sure. Well, I always have to keep in mind that a lot of the attitudes that we have for the country, right? There are fundamentally, I mean, we live in amplification chambers. We don't live in echo chambers, because I think that being access to what other people say is very, very easy. And I think it is very hard to really cut yourself off in that way. But we do live in amplification chambers. So when you do get the oh, dysgenic, great Satan sort of deal. Like, it's very easy to think that that is a nominally mainstream view. And I mean, like, yeah, the right has it. I know that it does. And even there
Yeah.
are days where I'm just like, man, we really just deserve to get what we deserve. But at
Yeah.
the same time, right, like, I, and I get a lot of shit for this because, like, if you go to my channel statistics right now, it's almost a very even 50-50 between American subscribers and foreign subscribers across the globe. And so, like, every chat or every live stream on the subject of America is always hotly contested, and it's always fun.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a big element of the right where I think that it also has to deal with the fact that we live in a time where, yeah, we can kind of get the full scope and picture to realize how ugly that this system and how far this thing really goes. Like, ugh. But at the same time, there were great men that have been slandered throughout history that are just absolutely insane that we have lost out on. Like statues of John C. Calhoun being taken down. I mean, there was this post about like occupation, and they're like, well, you don't know what it's like to ever live in an occupied country. And I just tweeted out a picture of someone tearing down a Thomas Jefferson statue.
That basically is that what happens.
I mean, that's what happened. And I mean, I think that comes to the conceptions of America, that there are two views on the right, where one is the right wing sort of like pro-Americana, or like understanding of what America was before all where we are now in the present times, especially of the 20th century. Because like the two visions of America that I think that come out from the right is one that fundamentally looks at where we are as a nation on the verge of complete demographic change and replacement.
Yeah.
And how to survive that as it propagates values that are antithetical to everything that came before it. And then secondly is ones where we have the life that we wanted to have, or the life of the works of men that came before us, where it's just a part of the culture that you have to live with. And it is, in essence, which one do you want to be? And you kind of have to choose which one, and recognize that the other is still a part of you. It's very grim, but for me, I mean, I don't see myself leaving. I don't see myself being an expat somewhere. I understand the people that do have their reasons. I respect that, but it's my home. And like I've said on Oren's stream and other streams before, I don't see myself leaving.
Yeah. I think that, I've certainly done my fair share of anti-American posting. But I think, I mean, I come from a country that's ostensibly worse. In every single dimension, every single way. So I have no right to talk. But I do think that there is like an undercurrent to the political right that like deeply, deeply hates America as like the source of like turning into like dysgenic filth and like, this sort of sludge of humanity. And like everything is extreme and everything is like out there and everything, But I think that but that sentiment can only get you so far, I feel. Because then what do you revert to? Do you revert to some kind of like weirdo, like European new right LARPing? Or you become a third worldist or like a Ron Paul Maoist? Or like, what do you do at that point, right? Like if you are American on the political right, like I think you have to seriously address that question of like what you're going to do. Because the political left in America, they have a very clear path. Which is
they're well, do what they're doing and continue to destroy every last vestige of what was. Like
to pull out a thread to this nothing less, nothing upon nothing. I'm gonna do the believer. I don't know, like that one line, nothing upon nothingness, nothingness without end. Like, go ahead. Sorry, Prud.
No. Well, I mean, but I mean that's the goal, right? Is that we for those that actually like live up to what they want, I mean, everyone has the goal right now. The operation is like to survive. I mean, that's why I do think that for a lot of American men in the West, like here, especially in the country, or even those who live in Europe or in the UK, I mean, it doesn't just apply to America. I mean, that sort of the globalization of how culture is exported means that everyone's affected, and it will eventually come for all. And that's why I kind of find it interesting to see China like try and clamp down on pop stars and video games and social media. And it's just like did you guys take the prep too soon or too late before the cultural pause seeps in? But only time will tell. But for the rest
We're
of us,
gonna
I
see
think
the viral load. Yeah.
yeah, we have to check the viral load in China. But I have to check a lot of viral loads in China.
Yeah. Historically, did you know that's
It's,
they say they speculate the Black Plague even came from China
it sure did. It sure
past
did.
the mountain range.
But I mean, the thing about it though is it's just like I think that what James Kirkpatrick had said, and what I think a lot of us have been saying is that it is right now your objective to survive. I mean, they hate your existence more than anything. I mean,
Yeah.
I got a comment the other day on a video saying like, why are we still talking about high, low versus middle in 2022? And it's just like because people still need to know. The bare basics have to be drilled into people's heads day in and day out and day in and day out. And the reason why is because more and more people either come to the scene or more and more people are like trying to understand, well, why is shit so fucked? And that's where we're at now. And for us, the goal, primary number one, is to survive. And that means having some means to be not as dependent, although that does make you a target, and having a network that isn't explicitly political. There's been multiple times throughout even my time being politically active from 2014 to today where it's just like plenty of people want to start off and do their own political movement. That's great. But have you thought about the other parts of your life, like marriage, like, family and friends and all
We're
that
not
stuff?
subtweeting anyone, by the way.
No,
but,
we're
like,
not. No, I'm just expressing how I feel.
right. Yeah.
And if this inadvertently overlaps with other people, trust me, it's not what I'm going for here. But like the goal right now needs to be that. And I
Yeah.
think that that's why I said very at the beginning of the stream, I really do think that I think the first 300 years of Christianity and how it survived countless persecutions and martyrdom, like we were just talking about with like Rich Russell and digital iconography now with these memes. I do think that is going to give us, it's not going to be very straightforward. It's not going to be a one-to-one parallel or overlap, but I think it will offer some very interesting steps to get here.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. And I think that, but I mean, we are in survival mode in a sense. And I think that, like, when you do try to develop some party or movement, I mean, it's very like, having like seen people that are in these movements, it's very like telling that you really can't, at a certain point, you really can't escape, like through your associations or whatever. And I think that, you do find people, like you can even find people that I mean, my hope is that some e-girl will slide into my DMs, who develop a parasocial relationship towards me. But I think that, yeah, that's definitely a problem, is that what are you going to do when like sort of the Eye of Sauron comes upon you? But I mean, those are perennial problems. But Red Pill Me on Calhoun, actually, I mean, isn't he a racist prude? I mean, isn't he,
Is this the way that we're going to start the conversation about the great statesman John C. Calhoun, one of the three parts that basically ran America during the 1840s? I mean, actually, if the person you really want to get red pilled on John C. Calhoun would be a good friend of mine named Christopher Sandbach, and you should have him on Content Minded one of these days.
Oh yeah, that could work.
If you want to hear like some of the more interesting facets of American history, that would be your guy. He just did a talk with Dimes at Blood Satellite that was fantastic.
Nice.
Well,
check it out.
It was very good.
Yeah. So yeah, Calhoun's a very interesting figure. I just don't know as much about him as I do other historical American figures. But yeah, so moving on, let's see, go down a little bit more.
Yeah.
InfoWars was banned. I'm trying. I have the voice in my head of Morgoth.
But you can't do it.
Yeah,
I can't do it either. But anything that he writes now, I read it in his voice.
Yeah. Oh, Endgame was like that was the film, man. That I remember when Endgame came out. I watched it on that one YouTube channel. It was called Change the Channel. I think the guy's still around. But Endgame was his big coming out. That was when a lot of the people within the Jones, like the InfoWars sphere, was a part of that film. And so yeah, go down. I mean, this is stuff that'll get us clipped off of YouTube. We read
true. That's true.
Yeah. I don't know if they're so stingy about the certain C word and maybe the V word, but vagina. Anyway, that was from King of the Hill, by the way. Remember Bobby's like vagina, and Hank spits out his beer.
Of all the things that Mike Judge has been rebooting, I'm kind of glad that he's left King of the Hill alone.
Yeah, well, he did that because Brittany Murphy died. That's why he'll never bring it back. Yeah, which I mean, that's a sign that Mike Judge truly is a man of integrity, though.
Yeah.
Problem is Jones has that too. It's even if Jones is kind of radical or ideologue, but notoriously reticent to speak about. Oh yeah, okay, go down.
Yeah.
I find Alex. Yeah, there we go. I find Jones's work fascinating because we're really seeing in a decades-long unraveling of America as a nation, both in cultural and political terms. It just so happens that Alex Jones acts as our guide. Moyer's documentary skipped from young Jones to Jones heading with a bullhorn towards that one place on Capitol on that one certain date. As an aura of inevitability, Jones was now in the cataclysmic event, which of course was worse than 9/11. He was partly responsible for, but beyond the immediate issue of the election, he was also influential in creating that was really at the heart of the entire saga. America was a nation with two truths, two visions of itself, which we were and are in a fight to the death for. I checked in on Alex Jones' most recent shows in preparation for the article. He's been going through a ludicrous show trial, resulting in him being slapped with a $45 million bill, spreading misinformation about that one place that they had to tear down for some mysterious reason. By the way, I did 3 hours with our good friend, default friend, Catherine D, on Adam Lanza, and hopefully will come out in a few weeks. So we recorded this thing back in May, but she's, been reticent to put it out.
I don't blame her.
Yeah. Well, she did the one with that guy called something. What's his name on YouTube? He's like, he's a delicious throwback from the old debate people of YouTube. Something genius. I forget. I have to look it up. It was a really great
genius.
No, it was not massive genius. What's his name? I have to look it up. But it was a really great episode. That's part 1. Part 2 with Adam Lanza is with me, and we go into like the OG YouTube atheists and all the fun stuff. Fun stuff. Oh my god. Second part of the show, he has an assistant pull up the injuries on Twitter, which revealed thousands of personal stories and videos. Well, we're in the end game now. I think that Alex Jones very much has that throw line of apocalypticism that you can only find in America. And you've talked about this, Prude, with your, lo-fi horror series. And I think that...
well, yeah, I mean, America is still one of the most... of the West, I should note. I'm not going to throw in comparisons to the rest of the world, but of what we would consider to be like the traditional European Western world, and by extension, like Canada and the United States. Like, America still has, like, one of the higher concentration of people that believe in God and has regular church attendance and things like that. And so, like, that language speaks to it. Like, I tell people all the time, like, if you want to kind of get a weird, like, nagging part of the old American soul is go read Nathaniel Hawthorne. And I'm not even talking about the Scarlet Letter. Just go read him and George Washington Irving. So, like, go read about Ichabod Crane. Go read The Minister's Black Veil. That stuff is kind of no longer... People say that stuff's no longer here, but the American cultural zeitgeist, when it comes to someone speaking in religiosity, there is a Pavlovian response in their brain, whether they like it or not, it's there. And so, it's something to keep in mind. I mean, he does speak with that sort of apocalyptic language. I mean, they're more sort of apocalyptic cults, I think, have definitely come out of the United States
than anywhere else.
About
factory, like it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a part of living in an unknown space where things seem to align, or you have your own readings of things. I mean, the most American thing about America is the fact that that we have so many differentiations of those viewpoints, or the religious language that coats our everyday being. I mean, the left does it too, whether they like it or not. They just wear it like a skin suit.
Right.
So, I mean, his apocalyptic language has been a part of it for as long as, like I've known about Alex Jones, whether it's the
It's
use
always
of
been there.
demons or sulfur or
Yeah.
anything, right? Like it's definitely a part of it. And I mean, a lot of politicians pay lip service to it, but I think that even if you are just a showman, which I don't even know if I want to call Alex Jones just a showman, but
Yeah.
with someone with like that capability of a showman, then it's all there, and
Right.
it's all basically it's all wrapped and packaged in religiosity.
Right.
I mean, for goodness sakes, there's a whole new religion that's born out of the United States that now has pretty much conquered Utah. So
Yeah, yeah, and I think even the left, like if you look at the ideological left in America, I mean, it largely is a series of like political cults at the end of the day. I mean, they try to mask it with like the officiated chambers of power, but if you look at the thinking behind it, I mean, yeah, it's pretty much is like a neo-Gnostic cult. I mean, I know Keith Woods has a issue with that, the Gnostic thing, but because his argument is that it doesn't conform to Neoplatonism. There is no like higher order that it's aspiring to. It very much is just immanent, right? Like, but I agree with that. But I think that when it comes to Alex Jones and American apocalypticism, I mean, even the character of religious and cultural cults in America change over time. It, in the beginning, you had like the Manson family. You had a lot of end times preachers that, I mean, even though they were cloaked in like American fundamentalist Christianity, let's face it, pretty much kind of were like a cult, right? I
yeah.
don't want to like insult our Mormon friends by calling them a cult, but like they definitely like when I think just by the nature of the beginning of Mormonism in America, they very much had to operate like a secret society because I mean they were basically I know like in Arizona and Utah, weren't they almost like G-worded by the American government more or less? Like
Oh,
they
I
were
mean, they fought the American government for years. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's part of the history of just the fighting between those two and fighting the federal government as it expanded ever westward as they kept fleeing from their own persecution and their own uh their own sordid history of a political machinations, right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
they're not no side is innocent there,
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly, exactly. So they had to almost operate like a cult, but then as you go into the 21st century, what is the American cult at the dawn of the 21st century? What is it?
Well, the cult of the dawn of the 21st century, like for me, looking back, I would have to say it was the unfiltered optimism that came of the end of the Cold War. It was a time out of history.
Oh yeah, that
Um,
too. That yeah, yeah, but
but I mean, what would you consider it? Because to me, it was just the rapid growth of the middle class. That's why I think so many people post 9/11. It was just like that optimism.
right,
The
right,
cult was the
right.
market.
But in terms of specific group though, who would you say?
Well, I mean, what came out of the late 90s?
What that one
So
particular cult?
yeah, that one particular one.
Heaven's Gate.
Yeah.
Oh, was that you were thinking of Heaven's Gate?
Well, yeah. Well, I was thinking either them or the Branch Davidians, but
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, yeah, okay, okay. But I'll get to that. Okay, I'll get to that. I'll get to that. Okay, so examine the cult of Jim Jones, the People's Temple, right?
yeah, yeah,
They came out of the
with close
new.
connections to Nancy Pelosi and the communists, by the way.
That's right, because Nancy Pelosi's family. I think James Kirkpatrick. No, it was it with him or was it? It was another academic agent stream where he said about like I remember Thomas was commenting on it about how like academic agent has like a very like in terms of like a European has a very good understanding of America. Basically, California is run by like 7 different families or 9 different
Well, yeah,
families.
Robert Stark did a whole article about that. How
Yeah,
modern day
yeah,
California is ran by like, I think he said 3 families mainly.
yeah. 3 families and there's sub families. I think Newsom is part of like the sub families.
Yeah, he's one of the 3, I think.
He's a little Janny boy. He's not really important. But Pelosi, her family's at the top because Pelosi's family comes from the original Italians that went that way largely to escape persecution from the federal government because of their extracurricular activities, if you know what I mean. you know? But so Pelosi's family, they were the first ones on the ground when they brought back the People's Temple, the coffins, right? And I believe some people connected to Pelosi, they were actually on the ground in Guyana when they had to like go over there because Leo Ryan got executed, right? The senator. But the thing is, though, that is an embodiment of the new age, quasi-Marxist new left of America in the 70s. If you look at Jim Jones's beliefs, right?
Yeah.
And so, he very, very much was like a socialist. He kind of was like an atheist. He didn't really believe in God. He said that, he appealed to the Soviet Union, but of course, Soviet Union under based Brezhnev did not want anything to do with it. No, I'm kidding. But
Don't start Stalin posting or anything like that.
yeah, don't worry about it. But so Heaven's Gate embodied like the closing of the new left and the new age movement in America, right? In the late 70s. But Heaven's Gate was the techno optimist, was the closing of the Californian ideology through occult sacrifice, because they were the embodiment of the worship of technology. A lot of them were IT programmers. The ufology thing that was pretty prominent, because what does Jung say in the 60s on his book on the flying saucer? That the flying saucer is now the techno cultural embodiment of the modern world, because we can no longer have those older religious archetypal signifiers. Now it has to be cloaked in these sort of auspices of technology that is embodied by the UFO, right? So the Heaven's Gate cult was the capstone of that sort of neo-religious sentiment over technology and ufology in the 1990s. Because remember, the UFO thing with like Coast to Coast AM like really took off in this era. Like my old man was a testament to that. He was listening to Coast, and I remember when I was a kid watching all those documentaries on Discovery Channel, so this, but the Heaven's Gate cult was that sort of capstone of that. The way that, and I don't know, will there be a right wing death cult? I don't know. I should say I will not speak that into existence.
Let's not jinx ourselves. But I mean, there is.
Oh no, the militia movement. There you go. That could.
Well, yeah, but I mean that got effectively neutered by Janet Reno in the Clinton administration in the late 1990s. Like, I mean, everything that happened with, like, say, the Arizona Vipers, like all of those movements, like, even though they did nothing wrong, legally speaking, they did nothing wrong.
That's right.
Everything that was accused of in court was proved to be fake. And, I mean, here we are, right? I don't know
what happened to those guys in Arizona.
I couldn't tell you. I know Razor Fist has a really good video on them that basically just proved that things that they were charged with were bullshit. So but I mean, that was definitely a big part of it, of the zeitgeist, late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, it all kind of came to a head, I think, also with shows like X-Files or sort of like Roswell films and things like that. But I think that I mean, that eschatology has changed on the left, where now it's about the climate, and now it's about
right.
I mean, there's competing cults of eschatology. I mean, the most famous part about it, right, is the what's the word I'm looking for? Is the that they brought out Noam Chomsky in 2020, right? And they had that conversation with what was it, like, that Sanders chick or whatever, the one that worked with Bernie. And he was just like, well, don't you guys care about having your grandkids drown? And, she was just like, our kids are getting shot by the cops now. And so, like, these competing, one is a more universalist eschatology, because that applies more to the global game. But then again, the problem with high, low versus middle is that you have to cater to the low needs now, right? So...
there's American Gestapo in blue just going around into every minority neighborhood and murking
right,
every single day in America.
Every single day they think it's like Gex, where you have the undesirable urge to beat an LA motorist. But
oh man, every single day there's another defense or another Bernie Gatz. You know what's funny though is that, like, a lot of people are lionized, which they should, like, the store owners,
Brianna Joy Gray, thank you, chat. That was the other lady that was on there.
No, but everyone's like lionizing him, or like the the couple in that rich neighborhood with the AR-15. You know that guy?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, or like I'm trying to think. Oh, well, Kyle Rittenhouse, right? But
Yeah.
nobody talks about Bernie Getz. Nobody talks about Bernard Getz. Why is that? Is that because, well, I mean, he did kind of shoot them for no reason, but like he felt threatened though. He felt threatened. So, for
You
those who
saying he
don't
was
know,
in a self-defense situation?
yeah. For those who don't know, Bernard Getz in the, I believe, the 1980s, he was a man of a particular ethnicity who was on the subway, and he said that there was a group of youths of another particular ethnicity that was trying to accost him, and he pulled out his revolver and he shot like 6 of them. For those who don't remember Bernard, that's like before my time even.
Before our times, for
Yeah,
sure.
before our time.
Kind of, what inspired that bit in the Joker film.
Yeah, exactly. That's what inspired the bit. Of course, though, it wasn't rich white guys that worked for a corporation. I mean, I'm not going to say no more. 80s in New York City. Just put it that way. 80s.
Yeah, the falling down moment.
The falling, exactly. Yeah. So, for those who don't know, look into Bernie Getz. He's potentially a figure we should lionize after Rittenhouse. No, I'm kidding. I think, well, Rittenhouse was way more legitimate than Bernie Getz. He just
Yeah.
Was Getz an ortho? Well, he was an ortho something, not Orthodox Christian.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. Yeah.
But I mean, as you talk about the past and you talk about sort of the aesthetics and cults of age, I think that kind of gives us a good transition to what Robert Stark wrote the other day, because I thought that was like a really, really good article. So if you don't know we're both, I think you're also mutuals with him. So I mean, like,
listen, for those who don't know, okay. Oh, sorry, did I cut you off, Prudence?
No, go for it.
Robert Stark, I have a video on him actually, and it was sort of a bucket list thing for me. I was on Stark Truth Radio with Matt Pegas, which you're going to talk to
on Saturday.
Yeah, so he was the co-host that time. I believe Pill Eater used to also co-host with him back in the day. But for those who don't know, Robert Stark, good friend of mine, amazing writer. He's been around for, I don't know why he's not bigger, but Robert Stark is sort of like everyone in the know knows him because he's been around forever. And he interviewed the greats on Stark Truth Radio. I mean, he interviewed everybody. I believe even James Kirkpatrick. But he interviewed so many big people. And Robert Stark's been around forever. And I don't know why he doesn't have more clout with the average listener. But he does have clout with, friends of ours, right? So.
Oh yeah. I mean, he'll DM me on occasion and tell me to go read stuff from his. And every time I read him, I'm continuously impressed.
He's got a bit of a
alt centrism. I like the name, where instead of all your stuff being centered in the political compass, it's everywhere.
Well, I was gonna say he's got a bit of a neurodivergency, but he knows that. He knows that.
Well,
and for those who don't know, to judge? No, but I love him though. He's a good friend of mine. For those who don't know, also, this is how I years ago, this is how we first started talking, because I called his book Degenerate, but it's amazing work of fiction that came out of the original alt-right space that was new and innovative, and it wasn't like what these other Wignats were doing. He wrote Journey to Vapor Island. For those who remember that book, he wrote part 2 recently, Return to Vapor. But go buy both of them, but go and read Journey to Vapor Island. It's quite a trip of modern literature. I mean, it's when you read, I mean, Matt, you have to read. It's a trip. Yeah, it's a trip. That's all I'm going to say. It's a trip. I mean, yes, it's kind of degenerate, but it's amazing. It's pure Kino. So I have nothing but good things to say about my good friend Robert Stark. Go and buy Journey to Vapor Island. Go and buy a second book. I was only joking back in the day when I called it degenerate, but maybe not, but who knows?
Yeah, but
All right, so
so
you take the lead on this one, Prude. You take the
yeah,
lead.
so this one's more about aesthetics, and I really liked the line at the end here. But what I appreciate about Robert is that Robert will see a tweet or a meme or something, and he'll just like
Yeah.
write the most insightful shit I've ever read, and it's
Yeah, I'm
just
excited
like
at the end here. Yeah, my video.
I quite enjoy how easy it is. I think for a lot of people on our side to just see something and just go off on it, which I greatly
Oh yeah.
appreciate it. So this was the tweet that inspired him. So Piccadilly Circus in 1965, Piccadilly Circus in 2021. Refugees welcome in.
Oh my god.
I know,
Oh
just
no.
peak. But anyways, it says, just for context, right? David Atherton is a British libertarian free speech advocate, writer for Breitbart, posted this tweet contrasting the images of London's Piccadilly Circus from 1965 to today. Atherton was making a political statement linking the aesthetic decline to the political slogan, Refugees Welcome, on an LED screen. The outrage from the right on Twitter was more focused on politics rather than the aesthetics, but the aesthetics and politics are inherently interlinked. Yes, they are.
Oh, yeah.
There's a case to be made that the message and aesthetics are both demoralizing, but the aesthetics matter here just as much as the political slogan. Correct. So yeah, his bit here though that he'll get into, where he talks about like the removal of statues and things like that. He talks about neon being this particularly difficult thing to maintain.
Yeah,
but there
it
was
is. It's got a particular chemical in it.
But and then he talks about how like we've changed now to the flat screen LED. And he says these minimalist, antiseptic, dreary public spaces that feel like hospitals encapsulate the modern late-stage capitalism. These unimaginative minimalist aesthetics erase distinctions, homogenize cities across the globe, and atomize people into numb consumer units. They are antithesis of the noblesse oblige, using minimalism to conceal power. And I think there's actually a lot of truth to that. I don't know what the appropriate term is where we use like the humans of flat design or like the corporate flat world art where everything is faceless, everything is generic. I find that this is something that Robert has talked a lot about in this regard, where the aesthetics of politics are just as important as the message, because how you represent yourself or what kind of images that you link to are a big part about that. And I think it's something that he's talked about in a lot of ways. Is just that like the whatever it wants to resist, like the soullessness, flat, humans of flat design, the corporate LED, and the messages that say everyone's the same, everyone welcome, everyone come in here, we're all going to imbibe on product and get excited for the next product. And you see this all around. Like the most infamous example as of late that I can think about that the distributors talked about in February was about that Chobani sort of like archaeo-futurist commercial where everyone is like living off the farm and enjoying.
No, that was
products.
Solar Punk. That's the leftoid version.
Well, yeah. Okay, so it's the left-wing archaeo-futurism.
That one, oh my god!
And that one is just like
not a white person in sight.
Not a single white person in sight. But heaven forbid we can all gather around the eco fridge and eat our Chobani or whatever.
Yeah, not a man in sight except for like little boys or old men.
Old men.
Yeah,
no sexually healthy age men in sight.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean that's the politics that's the aesthetic politics of the left, where really it is that there is no male, there is no white, there is no and you're going to enjoy your corporate product in the name of this imagery. And the best point that Dave made about it was that like that's unreality, like, and that's why the left will never be satisfied, and that's why there's always the essence of perpetual revolution, because their aesthetics of their ideology can never be actually attained. And this is a point that I think that Stark gets into about neon versus the LED bit in this article, which is like really good. And he says,
but also the influences of flat design really quickly. The original like corporate Memphis or like 90s to I would say early 2000s corporate digital design, way better. I mean, I get nostalgic over that stuff, Y2K. The stuff we have nowadays, the origins from which flat design takes place, I mean, we're 10 times more magnificent and of their era than now. Even early 2000s corporate design had a flair to it. It was ethereal. It was like the end of history. Like, we live in a utopia now sort of deal. But the sort of the utopian picture offered by the current aesthetic of life. And Robert Stark, he's very keyed into design and interior design and aesthetics. When he talks about the malls and how Trump represents 80s machismo. Well, we'll get into that. But yeah, the pink car wash, the famous London pink car wash sign.
Yeah, the
There's this
Seattle's
great.
iconic pink car wash sign.
Oh yeah, there's a
With
London
one lefty
yeah, the
urbanist
Seattle one.
tweeting, seriously, if the city landmark was this neon sign, what does it require? I mean, neon signs, of course, they're very difficult to maintain. But I like what he says here. That comment was not overtly political, but demonstrates a similar utilitarian mentality about how utilitarian left urbanists have become.
Yeah.
Which is just
Even like
inherently true.
eco-urbanism is sort of like just a band-aid, you know, like.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the same thing about like when they talk about like green buildings or a lot of ways. I mean, most carbon comes from the construction of the building itself, not, you know, and so it's just like, oh, a lot of the old buildings or restoration of old is really the way that you want to go about it. But no, we have to be utilitarian in our ideology about how can we make this more eco-friendly? How can we achieve net zero? And we're going to build all these things to accommodate more people, which never really helps, right? Like it's the folly of this sort of utilitarian political thinking where, oh, we have to have everything match our ideas. We're going to add more lanes, it's the whole discourse over walkable cities, right? Like, you know, we have to make things utilitarian. We have to have walkable cities, but they don't address the problem when they say, well, it contradicts the message of everyone's welcome.
So he comes up with some very interesting points up here, but you'll get to it.
Yeah. So like here's another perfect example: the woke signal arts box
God.
around. It's just it's terrible. It's terrible. But you know, this is I enjoyed this bit right here, and so normie conservatives don't value aesthetics, but at least the dissident right has embraced retrofuturism, and there's a growing bohemian right scene. Regardless, the trad right can be narrow-minded about culture and aesthetics as the left. Even Trump's movement, originally of aspirational 80s retro-futurist aesthetic, embraced by younger Trump supporters who went wayside in favor of the county fair aesthetic, sponsored by geriatric donor class, ironically, many of whom were moguls in the 1980s.
Yeah.
And this was the thing about sort of like Trump's aesthetic and Americana to like the average dare I say theory cell person, where like, yeah, he spoke of an America to the nostalgic boomer geriatric Trump's age kind of guys that grew up in this like world of like yuppies and taking over the country and the marketplace, and young men that will like, and I mean, you see this on Twitter every day where like, what was it where Trump's filling up gas in his like, you know, muscle car or whatever, and like gas is 89 cents and he looks like a Chad from like 30 years ago, and everyone's like, that's my president. And like, they're what, for better or for worse, like, you know, Make America Great Again has one hell of an aesthetic power to it that I think only complements the mimetic word of MAGA itself.
Even
I mean,
though
really
like the left in the media turned into like a Klan hood, but like in symbolism, but like it's very interesting. In my opinion, I think that the way to overtopple the county fair aesthetic, if you want peak right-wing aesthetics from the donor class, I think that you have to convince all of these old boomers to go back to the maximalist machismo aesthetic of the 80s. If they all have midlife crises and they all start doing cocaine again, and then maybe you could get the
they all bring back the Don Johnson look, we should be okay. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, then they'll go back to it. But no, but yeah, it does. Trump.
Well, it was like the meme with the couple holding their firearms outside in Minneapolis. Like didn't he plan on running for office or something?
I think so. Yeah, but the way his wife held the gun, like
but I mean, he had it in his hand. She had her wrist out. And it was just delightful, and everyone embraced it. It was it was a meme.
And the pictures of the house that was on Zillow, like
I mean, these guys were wealth, right? And I mean, they were both lawyers. It was in St. Louis, but I mean, he had his like pink polo shirt, his like mid-50s paunch was showing. He had the like khaki pants, and they're just both out there.
American firearm,
and the classic American, and it's just like, you know, that's. But aesthetically, a lot of people were like, that's what I want to go to, despite the fact that that's as 80s as it gets, right? So, I mean, like, it's kind of funny that, like, there's this Trump bring back the 1980s cocaine yuppie aesthetic, whereas a lot of the things that people want, like even sort of mainstream liberals and centrist types, are like, well, can't we just go back to the 1990s? And there's this even more milquetoast, like, well, now let's bring it back to the 80s when
Yeah.
It's
The
just
left, they want Kurt Cobain. They want like grunge and that
oh
type of scene.
yeah.
But us, we want the 80s or the early 2000s. I truly think that the early 2000s could be taken over by you know,
I think it's already beginning with a lot more of like Y2K posting and a lot
yeah.
more of
Well,
just
I'm leading
late
the charge for
90s,
the new
early.
metal revival, so
But for instance, one commenter stated, "Does this hyper-liberal consumerist economy of the left inevitably lead to the woke civilizational crusher of the right?"
Indian
Indian
Bronzer,
Bronson,
good friend.
good
Yeah.
friend, very smart guy, very spot on usually, as Stark points out. For the first led to the second. However, those
Mm.
points are not entirely wrong in the same sense that the forces of consumerism and capitalism that created neon discarded it later on. And it is true that neon signs were built to be temporary and that there are practical issues about their maintenance. Despite lacking
Yeah.
the whimsical, magical, ethereal aura of neon, bland LED signs make far more sense from a purely utilitarian and profit margin standpoint. And they can have multiple advertisements. There has been a revival for neon on a small scale, such as in
Yeah.
cars. But the point that he's starting to start to get into here is about sort of like the cyclical nature of how things get tossed in, tossed out. That I really do appreciate. I'm going to just scroll down a bit here
Yeah.
because he's got it.
We need the
Um,
GTA Vice City kind of look, you know.
there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, the appeal of the aspirational genre of retrofuturism is in part reaction to the essence of liberal capitalism that is everything that is disposable.
Mm.
Retrofuturism has a longing for lost futures and the alternative future that we should have had. It is different than wanting to go back in time or freezing change, which reactionaries and traditionalists try to do. It addresses the problem of each era being transient by seeking to create something forward-thinking and more permanent, yet borrowing from the eras of the 20th century. Alt-centrist and friend of the blog, Matt Pegas, who I'll be talking to this Saturday, wrote in the Politics of Aesthetics Revisited that no one would argue that the mall and the cathedral are aesthetically equivalent, but many would and have argued that they share
Mm.
some common thread of function and spirit conspicuously absent from the culture of the present day.
And both of them are
But
decaying, by the way, right?
and yeah,
So
and both of
yeah.
them are decaying. Well, I mean, if the New York Times is anything to say, Catholicism is having somewhat of a heyday right now.
Yeah. But
That
that's
things such
because it
as
directly
malls.
affects a certain tribe. But anyways, go.
Well, yeah, that
We all
and
saw that delicious tacos tweet.
Dimes Square and Catholicism are having an interesting collision
Yeah.
course. But things such as malls are relics of a more cohesive culture oriented around much more than our own standards towards greatness, masculinity, hierarchy, and divinity. And I
Well,
mean,
the
this
mall
is
really was like the promise of the new American century. The mall was, I think, the aesthetic cathedral of American capitalist excess, right? Like that is, it was, there was something uniquely Promethean about the mall that it gave you that promise anywhere you were in America. It gave you that life on the top, even if you were in the sticks, if you were in the heartland. So, but the fact
well,
that,
but that's
yeah,
the thing though, is that the mall also for like teenagers served a
yeah,
similar purpose to what the movie theater of the 1920s or 30s did, because
right,
where could you go on a hot summer day than to go into a large, cooled, air conditioned kind of in the 20s and 30s sense, right?
yeah.
And go to an air conditioned theater and just like pay a nickel or something, and like you're there all day and you don't
Used
have
to
anything to do
save,
until
yeah, films all day, yeah.
yeah, and also keep up on the news, right? Like, and now
That's right, they
uh,
had newsreels, yeah,
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 newsreels, right? And I mean, the mall was cyclically speaking the same thing. Where could a teenager go with nothing better to do? I mean, it's the teenagers who went to the theater in the 1920s or 30s became the mall rats of the 1980s and 90s.
yeah.
Um,
I know that some, like, anarcho-punk leftoids have, like, community, community, like, film theaters where it's kinda like you can go there, stay all day, they show whatever XYZ half pornographic documentary about the Chiapas or whoever. Like, I know
yeah.
we should do that on the political right in certain cities. That'd be amazing. We could well, what films would we watch? We would watch Drive. Um we would watch yeah, the Ryan
Just
every day.
every day there's two theaters that are rented out, or two booths for
Yeah.
theater screenings that are rented out. One day it's just all Ryan Gosling films, and then on the other it's just like the Mystery Grove
Documentaries or
movie list.
yeah, yeah, or like Birth of the Nation. No,
No.
I'm not gonna say it.
Well, they redid that, so I mean, you're
They redid
obviously
Birth of a Nation.
yeah, they made it a series to like counter the name, despite the fact that
Oh, that's
I mean, you
right.
can say all that you want about that film, kids, but you wouldn't get modern film techniques without it.
That's true. That's true.
So, but yeah, his bit about neon and these like drives towards something divine, reach about the aesthetics. Again, this is from 1852. This sort of growth and design of the Industrial Revolution, and
Wow, look at that. Yeah. Oh,
you
this part
know,
about IKEA is really good. This part about
yeah. So minimalism is implicit. I don't know how much I want to agree to this. Minimalism is implicit is linked implicitly to whiteness. I think I'm not going to take a hard disagree with that one.
No, but what he says in the top, that's a very interesting
Oh
insight
well,
that I didn't think
let me
about.
start there at the top. It
Yeah,
seems
yeah.
that minimalism that was popular for the first 2 decades of the 20th century is going out of style, but could replace the minimalism. But what could replace minimalism could be worse. For
Mm.
instance, the rainbow flag got a maximalistic takeover with the new intersectional pride flag. We've all seen what that one looks like, with the little circle and the
And the
don't even know
flag
in the
yeah.
flag. I mean. Brave of them to put goatsy on a flag. Regardless of what one is thinking about LGBTQ identity politics, the new flag is atrocious from a design standpoint, correct? Minimalism is implicitly linked to whiteness, e.g. IKEA. Okay. And with the left becoming more third worldist, expect to see more third worldist inspired maximalism. Okay.
Yeah, bright colors of the global south. And
for instance, I can't believe that's his name. Sanford Biggers' Afrocentric Oracle statue, the Rockefeller Center in New York. I love that that's his last name. It's just,
me and Matthew, by the way, we did
God has a way
3
of fucking
hours on that statue for Style Talks back when it first came out. And anyways, yeah, go ahead, read it. It's amazing. Yeah.
The new statue desecrates one of the most iconic Art Deco architectural sites in the world. I'm a big fan of Art Deco. And it resembles the old school racist caricature. Sure does. Not just the new statue linked to Black Lives Matter cause, but the sculptor ironically drew inspiration from the Greek god Zeus, who represents gatekeeping and tyrannical power. The bigger statue ironically obstructs the view of the Art Deco Prometheus statue, the Greek god of radical creativity and the pursuit of empirical truths who battled Zeus.
But also, the Sanford Biggers, the bust at the bottom, it's held by a mockery of Greco architecture that you find in like a Greek or an Italian trattoria restaurant. And he designed that because it's part of his Chimera series, where he's purposefully, some would say combining, the political right would say subverting, classic European aesthetics and art and combining it with his like weirdo American appropriation of certain forms of African art.
But he
that largely
references
comes from
Yu-Gi-Oh.
aesthetic modernism. What'd you say, Prude?
But he references Yu-Gi-Oh. There is another aesthetic genre that has been dubbed neoliberal kitsch or neoliberal realism, inspired by Norman Rockwell's arts, but with the icons of the Democratic Party, such as AOC and woke corporate. Anyways, this is the statue. I wonder if it'll let me. It's I can't. It's the same size there. If I click on another tab, absolutely hideous. Just from
but that
an
comes
standpoint.
from the tradition, though, of American cartooning from the Harlem Renaissance, because that's one of his big inspirations. Even though he's a plant from California, he's not really from Harlem. And it comes from then later graffiti culture took on that more ancient, older tradition in America from the Harlem Renaissance cartooning and satire. And this statue directly comes from that, because that is some of the burner pieces, the signature cartoon pieces that you would see in certain American cities like Chicago and New York from graffiti artists. So that's my thesis anyways. I'm sure Biggers has another more complicated origin story.
Oh, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
But
it's designed to subvert European art, obviously.
Well, of course. I mean, it's done right in the heart of like the Roaring 20s. And then I mean, you get stuff like this, like
I saw that photo. That was my video.
This feels like boomer cringe, but just
boomer liberal cringe. Yeah.
Boomer liberal cringe, but it's very gay.
Look, you got like the LGBT women.
No, that's the only white male.
Oh, exactly. That's right. The only white male permitted can be a homosexual. an imperial
or
subject,
or of a
imperial,
sacrificing subject.
a janissary of the regime. And
Yeah,
then you
a
have like,
janissary.
I always love how Borzy came up with that, man.
It's
That's
such a
amazing.
good one.
Yeah, you have a health worker, you have an indigenous woman pulling it up, you have
And
of course the
Muslim
LG
woman,
Muslim woman, you have of course African
nurse,
American, yeah,
Hispanic
nurse.
laborer.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
so yeah, I mean,
Oh man,
this is what is going to come for the
yeah.
next several
I
decades.
wonder what war they won after. I wonder if they won the war against the
Why are they
Chinese.
why are they pulling up the flag?
Well, that was from the American World War II.
No, I know that,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you'd
yeah.
think that what they believe in, why would you
They'd be
want to hold?
pulling it down.
Maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe that's what
Yeah,
they're
maybe
doing.
that's what they're doing. They're pulling it down.
So, anyways, this was the final line that
Oh,
really stuck with me in this article.
yeah.
While the 20th century saw each decade reinvent itself, today's culture feels stagnant alongside an overall aesthetic decline where there lacks any common cultural identity or vision for the future. We must reject the utilitarianism and the small-mindedness and the small-mindedness. Retrofuturism in both politics and aesthetics can reinstill vitality into society in a way that conservatives and reactionaries can't. Aesthetics are both implicit and explicit forms of political symbolism, and politics is really just aesthetic tries with aesthetic warfare. That's how the essay ends. And I what I really appreciate that is that for all the debate, I'm going to talk about this with Matt and Dan on Saturday, the guys from the New Right podcast.
Yeah, I had a great episode
WRITE.
with them as well. If you want to check it out too.
Yeah, their stuff is on Anchor, Spotify,
Yeah.
their Patreon. I listened to yours, Hudson's and Zero HP's.
Yeah, ZHPs. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all good stuff. But I do like this point here about aesthetics, where at the end of the day, like, there is an aesthetic battle for visions, because the way in which you present yourself aesthetically is the vision that you provide. And so again, it goes back to like the Chobani commercial. It goes back to this like tearing of things down, putting up hideous art. I mean, the hair pick in that one Georgia or Louisiana town in front of the mayor, like that's their aesthetic future. And to where someone like Bronze Age Pervert can beautifully describe it, of these young Martin Sheen-faced lesbians that are going to house you into the camps of tomorrow, right? Compared to, what they seem to be is the inevitable march of progress. Or has the Rene Girard interview with I Am 1776 about what are the aesthetics of the Great Replacement? Like, that's what it is.
Yeah, even like the chest markers of the particular Janissaries, that aesthetically is just like, that's a mark, right? That's I don't want to say anymore for fear getting banned.
No, I mean, we know what line that is, but I mean, to them it is a symbol of affirmation, dare say a symbol of faith. That there is the aesthetics to it, right? And
well, it's like flagellation, right? Like, it's got that particular, like, you sacrifice for.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing I've been saying for a while now. What is the progressive aesthetic vision for a straight white male? There isn't one, right? There isn't you're either gay or you're not in the picture. And so you have to come. You're erased, and so you have to come up with a new identity for yourself, whether it be some neurodivergency or becoming part of that Janissary Corps, like that, as you had said, a high court advisor. So I mean, that's definitely a part of it, where I think that I don't know if that, I mean, is it ugly maximalism? Like, I
think it's beautiful to them because it affirms a part of their identity. I think that, like, again, like, I mean, as much as we are exposed to a particular variety of them that deeply hate us and want to ban us and report our tweets and all that, I do feel immensely sorry for a lot of these younger people. Like, I mean, I talked about this with Helena, who was I released her episode with Default last week. I do feel deeply sorry for. I do feel like a lot for these people that are going through this particular moment, because I think that they truly are sort of being caught up in the sort of wheat thresher of hypermodernity. And I know that sounds like condescending coming from a LeBase trad reactionary, but I do think that we're so enmeshed in this sort of this like obsession about like this ugliness and these and it's dysgenic and all this stuff. But I do think that in a sense we do have to realize the gravity of it. We do have to
Yeah.
realize that a lot of these young people are being taken in by the aestheticization of their own decline. And
Well, and
yeah,
maybe that's the thing about the maximalism about it,
right,
because at a certain point in time, there were certain barriers that you weren't supposed to cross. There were thresholds and lines that you wouldn't take a step over. But now, it's that stuff there is just completely turned up to 11. I mean, the whole
yeah,
teachers thing, the whole coming out in front of your, your classroom and making
yeah,
kids talk about it at younger and younger ages. I mean, that's sort of an aesthetic maximalism that you wouldn't have thought was there 10, 15 years ago. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, the university or or like public school's always been a problem. I'm not going to be the first or the last person to tell you that. But I mean, growing up in public school, even when I was younger, was never that explicit. And so like it's been maximalized to such a degree where like, yeah, everyone's got to be a part of it. And like Dagbreaker's got this great point in chat about, now I do see why the anti-hero has become attractive. And I mean, that's sort of the counter aesthetics from the right.
yeah,
And again, it's why Patrick Bateman from, American Psycho. It's why Ryan Gosling from Drive. It's why every time a new movie that comes out, there's some sort of meme about a new personality being downloaded, because those are the aesthetics for the despondent white male in modernity. I mean, and that's sort of been the counter response, which I think is kind of self-defeatist. Like, you don't want to be getting stabbed in the gut and driving off at the end of a movie. So I think that it kind of does behoove whatever movement or group or whatever you want to identify with to have a viable set of aesthetics to go along with it.
yeah, yeah. There was this great tweet I'm trying to find about speaking words into existence. Let's see. Let me try to find it here. It's on my timeline. I'm sure I retweeted it. But it said something to the effect of let me try to find it about like speaking. Yeah, I know it's kind of it's from a while and a bit. Jigu's bitching a chicken burner. It may have come from Marty, Sim Disrespecter. But I'm trying to find the yeah, it's basically along the lines of, okay, I don't think I can find it, but it's
No
like
worries.
you speak words into existence. That it said, if I recall, the quote said, when you like about someone's character, when you call when you call when you call a guy a gentleman, watch as his back arches up, he takes on a air of authority. When you call a woman a lady, watch as they're filled with grace. You literally speak words into existence. And I think that sort of like the reverence that people used to have for each other is gone. And I think that that's a big detriment, is that we don't have these sort of common colloquial ways of approaching each other. And but the beginning of the stream we talked about the politics thing. There's this tweet I recall retweeting from what's his name? Let's see where it is. This is from it was the one that that my good friend Trash World also retweeted. Where is it? I know it's annoying. I'm trying to find it.
Well, the bookmark feature on Twitter is an amazing.
Yeah, I do. I bookmark a lot of stuff, but I have to. Let's see, where is it? I think you retweeted it as well.
Oh man, I retweet all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I know. I know.
But I mean, that's the curse of Twitter in a lot of regards to that. But I mean,
here it is. It's from Kerwin. You know Kerwin?
Yeah.
Zermatist. Yeah, it looks like in 2020, the deep state reached full and complete political consolidation, and we're now just seeing the beginning of what it looks like. Which means the presidents and other individual politicians are less important than they have ever been in U.S. history. I think the smart right-wing pundits are aware of this, but can't just admit it. because their jobs are to be pundits and to say rah, rah, rah for election politics. When I say black-pilled stuff like this, though I'm not actually black-pilled about life at all, I lose followers. It's just simply not an appealing message to tell people your vote doesn't matter and you have no real control. People like that like to feel like participating in power, abstract processes, but you don't have some power over your immediate surroundings in three-dimensional space. So I think that's probably a good point, is that, you know, the inspiration for this episode is what motivates us, because, you know, what motivates us despite like massive political disenfranchisement. I think that it's quite an interesting question. What can you really do about it, right? Like, I mean, apart from like why do we still feel the need, this like almost neurodivergent need to observe and comment on everything? I mean, maybe it's just a grift, obviously, but
well, I mean, by all
yeah.
means, as someone would say, sneed those super chats away. But I mean, it's why we are inspired to write, or why we do it, I think, is my story is kind of boring, because I was always in very professional, upper middle class, or like the NGO kind of sphere of world, where you know, people knew that I did not support the Democratic Party or anything like that. And I was always asked for the contrarian, oh, you know, what is the polite Republican response to, you know, progressive position X? You know, do you have a Y for this? Right. And I got used to doing that for years. And not to mention doing speech and debate in college and all that jazz just meant I was like very good at polemics. And so like, you know, like this meant very cringe letters to the editor over issues of like charter schools and school choice and like your conservative issue of the day, right? Like all of that stuff was just part and parcel for me. And so when I left El Paso and I moved, I kind of got like hit over the head with the fact I was in a totally different world. I was in a much more redder part of the state. I was in a place where people gave a shit about their community. They would go to church on Sunday. They'd like talk after church to like make sure that the kids are doing fine. They offered aid in case a tornado or a storm came in. And it was just a radically different world, where this is sort of like that old style Republican pastoralism that you see a lot of like Abbeville Institute guys talk about. You know, this is the stuff that whether Wendell Berry or Don Livingston would talk about. Like, though, that I was like, okay, like
Desert Solitaire, yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it fundamentally pushed me further to the right just by nature of living out here. And I was like, oh my God, this has to be like preserved at all costs. And then, of course, like the wonderful, you know, Kung Pao Sicken, General Tso's Revenge, the Chinese delicacy of your choice came in. And at the same time, I'm on dialysis. And I was just like, well, I've been listening to all these people for years, you know, whether it's the AA or the Distributist or Charlemagne, discovering all these people. And it's just like, well, I've got nothing else to do, you know? And so foolishly, I believed the concept of, well, if anyone can do it, why not me? And I've very quickly have learned in the now almost 2 years of me doing this that no, not everyone can do this. And not to say that, you know, if you want to try, by all means, go for it. But I've learned that I think that there are a lot of greats that probably would have been better than what's out there, but they didn't stick around to do it, and because they fall out for it. And I mean, and so what inspires me to write now is that my friend Conscious Caracol had noted I was on a stream a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about home and place. He says, I've noticed that a lot of your writing is done based upon a drive or where you drive. I live in the middle of nowhere. To go to town to get fast food takes me about 30 minutes, which is probably very good for me health-wise. But so I get inspired when I drive through the countryside, or I see, you know, everyone has that famous picture of that little strip of gas stations in Pennsylvania, right? And like you can see, that's not the only place in the country that's like that. There are many places in between giant intersections of U.S. highway and interstate where it's like that. And
Breezewood,
Breezewood, Breezewood, yeah.
I love how Breezewood's become like the dividing. Like it's like both. It's a
litmus test. It's a Rorschach test. Do you see Breezewood and do you want to defend it, or do you see Breezewood and do you want to destroy it? Right? Like, but I mean, I live.
Political left and right hate it though for different.
But they both hate it, but some hate it, and then some also love it. It's just very
Yeah.
It's the aesthetics of Americana. But like, I live in a place where there's a bunch of breezewoods. I live in a place where there's a bunch of
In
I,
Niagara, we have a similar thing. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And so I get inspired to write because I live in a place where, who are the people that run the breezewoods? I live in that kind of place.
Mm,
And so that's really the big part of why I've been writing so many of these essays about what I see, what I observe, what I like. Some of them I haven't published, and some of them will probably wait until the book comes out. But
mm,
the title of what I'm going to have finished out is called Dispatches from the Imperial Heartland, because I live in flyover country.
mm.
And I'm also fundamentally aware of the people that want to, high low versus middle. The people that want to like hollow out middle America are also the same people that are projecting out their cultural pause to the rest of the world. I know that, and I get to watch it happen in real time, both at home and abroad, and it sucks.
Yeah.
So it's a big inspiration for why I write, because yeah, we're always, inclined to make videos or inclined to make essays and comment on things. I mean, we both do that, right?
Mm,
Whether it's this show, Content Minded, the Sunday stream, which I'm going to have a new title for it next week. So I
mm.
mean, all of it, yeah, we're driven to it. But I think, like, for me, I'm driven to it primarily because someone should write it down. And a lot of
Exactly.
us are called to do that. I am called for it, not just as to rebel against it, but I mean, there's a political moment right now where things enter a intentional dark age. It's not like the sack of Rome where the classics and the theologians and the philosophers of ancient years are gone,
Right.
but rather than
They're slowly being processed
they're
out,
slowly
but
they're
yeah.
slowly going away, right?
Yeah.
Whether because they're racist or ancient or it's not diverse enough, whatever. Like, they're going away. And so, like, people like Imperium Press, people that bring up these old authors, like, these guys are doing the work of what a lot of guys from the ancient church did in preserving and translating a lot of old works. And so I think that that's kind of what matters in my point of view. It's like, well, someone should write about these times, because I don't know how much of, it's like in 2049, like, oh, that blackout, and then like all of our data is gone. Well, it's just like all the stuff that I write on to Substack or my scripts, they all start out handwritten. So at least I've got that to preserve.
Oh wow, man.
So
I
yeah,
know about
my
that.
whole process was just like, someone should write about this, because I don't think anyone. Well, it's not that anyone else isn't; it's that someone should, and so I feel called, to do it.
Yeah, yeah. I think like there is sort of not irrational, but there's sort of like a supra-rational reason. There's sort of like an underlying impulse towards why we do what we do. Um, and when you truly do examine like people that like, I mean, people who don't really have success, or like, what is success, right? Like even like the biggest people in our sphere still have a day job more or less, or like, well, maybe not, but maybe they're getting Theo money. But there's, I think that there is sort of an irrationality to it, uh, given like the immense forces that want to suppress. And I know that like that becomes a delusion in itself, right? Like, oh, you start Francis C. Deck posting like, they're trying to suppress the communist computer god is trying to suppress these groundbreaking truths. Like it's more, it's a bit
We
different
should
than
do a
that.
stream on him one of these days. Just
Yeah,
go
man,
through his rants.
I did the episode with Jeffrey Schollenberger, Outsider Theory.
Oh, nice.
But Francie Deck, yeah. Um, but his like relation to the technology and like conspiracy, and it was a really great episode. It's very like theory solid driven, and I think that why do we do this? Okay, like I think that there is an irrationality if you're given like all of these like immense forces that are beyond our control. But I think that there is an element of it where you want to have future generations discover what you're doing now. And a lot of it is kind of like just culture war ephemera that probably
Yeah.
won't exist. Like, I don't think that, like, put it this way, I think that no one's going to be watching Sargon streams from 2016, but people probably will rewatch Sargon streams from like 2022, probably. I mean, depending on the meaningfulness of the content, right? Like, I think that a lot of what we're doing is kind of culture war ephemera, but then I think that when you do put anything out there, you create sort of like a stock of content of things that you do find meaningful. I think that it's always like nice to see that people have a capacity to discover it later on. And maybe like as much as we are facing an immense sort of demographic decline on the political right, let alone like in terms of like other demographic declines, but like I mean in terms of people like willing to like adopt certain like right wing or reactionary ideas, whatever you want to call it. I think that if there is a contingent of Zoomers in the future that will go up, that will like sort of rediscover these things, then maybe it will be worth it. Maybe it will be, even though they might feel even more immense disenfranchisement. Essentially, my opinion, I think in North America is that a lot of people in positions of power who are like more of the conservative side have basically been either consciously playing as a heel and ruining things for us and has stepped on, their boot on our necks, or
Yeah.
they've just fumbled things and shit the bed for like 50 years. And I think that a lot of people who've had the money and the connections, like Conservatard Inc., for example, like Conservatard Inc. Oh my god. A lot of those people, not only have they failed us, but they've worked against us, and they really, really, really fumbled things. And they don't realize that. I think the people like David French, like, the David Frenches of the world.
Yeah, the conservative case for why you should die, of the
Exactly.
world.
Like, those people don't realize that our enemies view them with just as much hatred as they view um the right stuff or whatever. Like Richard Spencer, whatever, even though Richard Spencer's not like the hairdo is not whatever. Like, I mean, I'm saying like symbolically, like they don't see a difference between David French and Cum Graper 1488. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're gonna come for all.
They're all the same. They're all the
Yeah,
same. And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
that's the thing, right? It's just that you can spend years playing apologia. You can spend years playing the middleman.
Yeah,
And what does it get you? It gets you an ending like Judas, like what have you done
exactly.
other than sold out the people that you wanted? And it's funny where you mentioned the hairdo. I was just thinking about what's that song from like the Kooks or whatever, like he's a well-respected man.
Oh
It's just
yeah,
he's a
yeah.
he's like a well-coiffed man is what I was
A
thinking
well
in my mind.
coiffed man. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh my god. No, but without subtweeting certain celebritards, I think that
Oh,
celebrity
it's the Kinks. Thank you, Fingal. I
was the
appreciate it.
Kings. Yeah. No, but I think that that's what I mean. Like these people, they've sort of essentially made a Satan's bargain. They've made sort of like a, like the Andrew Sullivans and the David Frenches of the world. They've really they've really, I think they don't realize the damage that they've done. They don't realize the generations that they've condemned on the political right. And they don't realize the extent to which that they will also be wiped away if they really sort of play into the hands of our political enemies. And
Yeah.
but culturally as well on a spiritual level, I think that um these type of people, they really don't realize it. They can't get it. They think that as much as they claim to like be working against like the whatever they want to call it, the globalists or whatever, like they hate us even more, really, honestly. Like you notice
Oh,
like
it's the
yeah,
ultimate Faustian bargain. Like that's the thing where you want to make memes or not me, like you want to make your name known in media. You want to write a book. You want to write an essay. You want to be
right,
well
right,
known. And it's just like, but at the end of the day, what's the price that you pay? Your soul has been sold to like your enemies, and now you're
exactly.
literally a disgusting flesh puppet for them. And
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like Andrew Sullivan with the whole like what was it on Jon Stewart, talking about like white privilege or whatever, and he
Oh
just
my
gets like
god.
railroaded over it. And
Yeah.
it's just like I don't pity him because it's just like you deserve it
He's living
because
hell. He's
you're
living
you're
hell.
living
Yeah.
hell. And like or like he got ratioed the other day when like the devil himself, Dick Cheney, was just like, I support the threat to our republic from Trump is greater than anything else. That's why you need to vote for Liz Cheney. And he's just like, despite Dick's voting record and track record, the threat is far more important. It's just like,
the threat.
This is where you're at.
Say that to the 2 million Iraqis that he helped erase.
And the constant deluge of veterans committing suicide still today in America and across the West. Like, and that's what I did. I quote tweeted him, and I just had a list of casualties in both wars, and I was like, tell that to them, because that stuff really rubs me the wrong way. It's just a military brat. But yeah, I mean, that's the other thing is like a lot of it also is me trying to like reconcile just sort of growing up, because like one of the earlier essays I did that'll probably be in the book was this one on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, because it was just like, didn't know if my dad was alive that day, and like I grew up with this like very sentimental rah pro George W. Bush camp, to where like I can look at him now giving talks or whatever, and I'm like, I hate his guts. I can't stand him. Everything that he has done to my country is terrible. And he probably wasn't even the fucking figurehead in charge. But I mean, he like full on went with it, because it's always a managerial regime and oligarchy. But it's just like, at the same time, in the back of my mind, there's this twinge where my brain replays the,
and I'm proud to be an American.
Although I saw him in concert though, for that.
You saw Lee Greenwood in concert.
Yeah, he did a tour,
a military
with,
thing, right?
NWR. Yeah,
him
and Toby Keith and a few others. But
whoa!
So I've seen a shit ton of like country artists that I don't listen to now.
Yeah,
but no, my brain goes back to the
I'm free. He did a Canadian version, eh?
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he did a Canadian version of God Bless Canada. It's called,
Oh, absolutely delightful then. But no, my brain goes back to the I can hear you and the whole world hears you speech. And and it's just like, like when you're young and like your dad just got attacked, and like your whole identity is like, this is a part of what you grew up on. Then like, you embrace that shit. And so like the first election I ever paid attention to was the 2004 one. It's like a nine-year-old kid, wanting to make sure that like George W. Bush got reelected, even though it didn't matter. But I started reading the newspaper, started reading the Stars and Stripes, started reading the Wall Street Journal, started reading the New York Times.
And now he's painting. Okay. Now he's
now he's painting the faces of the men that he sent to die. But like,
God,
but like now I'm like, I can come to terms and fully reject all of this. And it's like, why
painful, though? That's
because you're ripping out a part of what you grew up with. But it's like the Alex Jones bit, like you're gonna get a Democrat in, and he's gonna be the same, and it's just like
you're gonna love it when they do it,
and you're gonna love it when they do it, and that's what. And then like me, in high school and graduate and finishing up college, when Trump is coming into it, I'm just like, oh wow. They did love it when he did it. And it really does illustrate kind of just like the fake and gay aspect of what we deal with. And so that's what really does inspire me to write so much. It's just like, there's a lot of weird American contradictions that I have to fucking reconcile.
Yeah. There, like I said, there is an irrational, like I guess, Vasily Kandinsky called it an inner necessity for the artist, but the writer also has that inner necessity, I think, because like think of it like that was such a turbulent time in American history. When it comes to like the way I reflect upon my own non-nation, I don't have similar romanticisms. I think people are clearly, they know that about me, and I think that but there is something about, I think, the particular place that I've grown up in Niagara that has a very particular, like semi-rural suburbanite aesthetic. And I think that growing up near the falls is quite interesting in terms of our local history, in terms of the way that people perceive, like any tourist trap, I think has that. And I think like when you do see behind it, that, tourists don't usually see. It is quite interesting. And I think like I definitely want to rate more about that. But in terms of like the future and the direction and the way my country is, I'm like it's too blackpilling. It's too.
Well, I mean, that's why ending bigly has been such a great thing to go through, because that is. I mean, I get it. Like some of the writers in there aren't Canadian, but I mean, most of them are, and it's just. a really good way to get a gauge of
Yeah,
sort of the self-reflection of what it means to be, Canada when Dominion Day is no longer Dominion Day.
exactly. Well, now did you know the according to these anti-hate people, there apparently the old flag is a hate symbol now of
Oh
Canada.
man, of
Yeah, it's true.
course.
Of
Or
course, of
just the
course.
same way the FBI doesn't like it if you fly a Betsy Ross flag.
Oh yeah, is that the circle? Is that
Yeah.
the why? What's wrong with the Betsy Ross flag?
Well, because it's the same thing with the Gadsden flag and everything else. It's political,
Mm,
revolutionary imagery, and so
don't tread on me.
anything that ties you back to the founding of the United States must be rooted out, supplanted, and subverted.
Yeah, and evil white nationalists use it, so that's probably
Yeah,
yeah.
and by that
And
they just mean the same 5 boomers that keep protesting their property tax increase at City Hall.
what's the meaning of the snake in the Gadsden flag? Why is it it's like cut up in a certain way? Like
Oh, join or die is what that one is, and it was a
oh
message to all of the states or to all of the colonies that we can't do it alone. It has to be a united front because I mean
oh
during
I
the during that time period, I mean it was a very politically tense bit of a lot of the New England ideologues that were like really
mhm.
pushing for this, but a lot of the fighting was in the South, and so there was a lot of tension even at the beginning of the country of of regional tensions, and they all had to put on a united front. So the Continental Congress is currently dealing back and forth throughout the Revolution and even after with the Articles of Confederation of like, well, how the hell do we manage now with all these different regional,
Mm,
issues? But for instance, I mean, you could argue that, I mean, they say Lexington and Concord, the Revolution really starts in the South. I mean,
really
I
interesting.
would argue that the war of regulation just a few years prior to the revolution is really what starts kicking stuff off, at
But
least
wasn't
politically in a mindset.
wasn't the majority of the fighting in the North though in the Revolutionary War, or was it?
Well, I want
I wonder.
to. It's a hefty. I mean, I'd have to double check, but I would say that there's. I mean, New York and Philadelphia are occupied, but I mean, there's
Mm.
also extensive fighting out in. There's also extensive fighting in Georgia and the Carolinas as
Oh,
well.
really? Eh?
Yeah.
Because I figured like the British had more of their base up here in Canada, so I wonder if
But it
like
is definitely considered a sort of a New England war, which
yeah,
again,
yeah.
much to the problem of Southern financiers and people that are paying the economic toll for it with their cotton.
Yeah, because yeah, but the South was also like certain states were involved in the Revolutionary War, right? Like most of them are like
Yeah,
the
but
South.
the reason why I mentioned like the war of regulation is because it's like it's in North Carolina and it's like I want to say it starts in 1765, so like right after the end of the 7 Years' War,
Oh,
and
interesting.
it has a lot to do with economic depression,
Mm,
demographic changes, or with new people coming in.
mm-hmm.
And basically, it was sort of a class war and overthrowing a governor. And it was just really sort of the start of this anti colonial sentiments in the United States.
Mm,
I'd say
interesting.
that's where it starts, but
Mm.
the South did have a lot more. And that's the other thing too, is that the South did have a lot more Tories that would eventually flee into Canada.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, that part's kayfabe though about the Southern involvement. Anything the South did that was good has to be, kayfabed. Do we want to cover the last article, or do we? Would we?
The interview with Anon. I haven't finished it. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we've been going for 2 hours. So.
I want to dedicate because it's so long. I want to dedicate, I think, a full episode on it
Oh yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah,
because
yeah.
I got to the part where he's talking about like, um, just regarding power no longer it's just it's stuff about scale. I want to talk about like scale in this article. Those are the two things I think that are really good. They both about this like dependency about they need us to both stay docile and but also they want to get rid of us and they need
Mm,
us to survive. So
yeah.
yeah.
He uses a lot of bio. It's very Deleuzian. He uses like a lot of biological metaphors. So, um, what's this from Philip Daniel? How much do you know, Prude, about the patroons of the Hudson Valley? Dutch aristocrats in upstate New York practiced de facto feudalism until 1850. Oh,
Oh, I'm gonna
interesting.
have to look that one up.
Yeah. Someone mentioned BAP's Club Tropical Excellence. You know what's funny? I think that it's actually probably better if Club Tropical Excellence does not exist materially, but spiritually is an ideal that can motivate us. But I mean, it would be pretty cool though if there was an actual club. I probably wouldn't. I mean, I probably don't pass the BMI test to be a part of it, but I think it would be pretty good though. Pretty good ideal. Um, War of New England against America. Yeah, it's George W. Bush, man. Caribbean Rhythms episode 116. George W. Bush, man of power. No, yeah, no way is he equal to like Mike Hoare or George W. Bush, man of power. The ultimate crime of George W. Bush pretending to be a Texaner when he's not. He's from Kelly Bomport, Maine.
Oh yeah, but
Yeah,
Texan in the sense that he's a New England
yeah, blue blood.
transplant. Yeah,
Yeah.
but no, I mean, for you though, I mean, you mentioned a little bit of it about living in the first postmodern or post-national nation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, what does inspire you to keep going? Because I mean, it is crazy. I think right now
Yeah.
to sort of be Canadian in
Oh
this day
yeah.
and age. Just as I would say, it's just as crazy to be American.
Yeah, it's crazier in a different way. It's crazier in that like nobody's willing to really like say or confront the problems that we have. And I think that like the fact that like healthcare is getting progressively shittier and it's really kind of scary in terms of how we can proceed as a country.
Yeah,
I think that it's certainly interesting, but I feel that in some ways there is an even greater entrenched political class in Canada that is immobile, even compared to America. I know that's hard to believe because the American deep state is sort of showing it's sort of flexing its nuts right now, and they have the ability to sort of rig trials and execute warrants that are basically nonsense and so forth. But I think that it's definitely interesting how apparently I don't know if this is for sure, but apparently more millennials in Canada are going to be willing to vote for Peter Palavra because Trudeau just destroyed things so much that it's just become such an embarrassment that even the pot smoking millennial that initially voted for Trudeau back in 2015 because of pot, largely due to Weed Lamau, that they're gonna like vote for like one of the more conservative candidates, and by conservative I mean by Canadian standards, not by American standards. It's very funny how that's
but is
happening.
Peter Palavra like is he better or worse than say like Stephen Harper?
In some ways, he's a bit better, but I think that I mean, only time will tell. I mean, as much as Stephen Harper was a total shill for that one country in the Middle East, and as much as he was like a as much as he was like a very much like middle of the road, like he would basically be like a red state Democrat if he was in America. And as much as Stephen Harper sort of like didn't anticipate the decline and he really like lost the culture war, um I still think that the problem with Palaver is that he lacks like the cutthroat Machiavellian character of being like a true manager the way that Harper was. Like, because whatever you can say about Harper, and I know like I criticized him back in the day, he truly was like a leader though. Like he truly did like lead with an iron fist. And he was cunning and smart enough to know when like he accomplished. I mean, look at what the man like if you judge a man by his goals in life, that's how you judge them. He wanted to do two things. He wanted to unite the conservatives, which he did, although he had to, like, in my opinion, he had to gut the social conservatism to do it. He had to basically get rid of the reform element of, and for those who don't know, reform was the party in Alberta, under Preston Manning, who was actually kind of based. He had to get rid of that. So Harper definitely suppressed the pro-lifers in his own, party. But he did two things. He wanted to unite the Conservative Party, which he did, and he wanted to destroy the Liberal Party, which he did at a time before Trudeau. He absolutely decimated the Liberal Party to the point where the NDP was the opposition for the first time in history. And that was largely because of Jack Layton, obviously. Not that I agree with Jack Layton, but God rest his soul. He was a good leader for the NDP. He was a nice guy. I don't, as much as I disagree with his policies, I really don't have a bad word to say about Jack Layton. He was a good guy, the guy that replaced him is I don't want a Fed post. I don't want a Fed post about Jagmeet Singh, so don't worry about. But no, I think that Harper, he truly set out what he wanted to do in life, and he did it. And I think that he has said certain things in the National Post that are kind of semi-based about globalism or whatnot, about the direction of Canada. But of course, he's got to put in boomer nonsense as well, But no, I mean, Harper definitely has a mixed legacy, but he's not like the demon that the media certainly painted him as. So June says Palaver was fine in opposing sniping from the sidelines, but don't see him as PM. I think you can take what you can get, but yeah, I don't. He has a very difficult uproad battle to become prime minister because basically all the forces of the inner party in Canada. Because you got to remember, there is no other party in Canada, not like America. There is no Republican Party. The Conservatives are definitely, he has a very large uphill battle on his hands. And Leighton and his Chinese wife had a government subsidized apartment in downtown Toronto, just a tiny scandal. Yeah, I think I remember that. I mean, Jack Layton's wife is terrible, but his kid is also terrible. They're just terrible politicians. But no, I mean, I can't fault the man. Jack Layton, he was a genuinely, kind soul. And I think the way he died sucks. He died of cancer. It was not very good.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, well, like Rob Ford as well. Died of stomach cancer. Not a very good way to go.
No.
And yeah, I mean, I said this before. I'll say it again. If I had a choice between the two Ford brothers, I wonder which one would have ascended to the Lord's kingdom or that other place. Maybe it wouldn't have been Rob Ford. Put it that way. It wouldn't have been Rob Ford. We had a third party in the USA, the Reform Party, Solitary Prohibition Party, socially right, fiscally left. Yeah, Canada had a history of that as well. We had the Social Credit Party in Alberta before Reform. But the Social Credit, they had some kind of... They actually, I mean, if the Social Credit Party was around nowadays, they'd probably be, in terms of the modern political right, they had some weirdo eugenics ideas as well out in Alberta.
Oh, different times.
Oh, Ross Perot was also a Reform Party candidate.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Ross Perot was to me, what they had to do to kind of get him to shut up does kind of illustrate what one rich man in America could do just to buy up the airwaves and bypass the system. And in a lot of ways, Trump kind of learned from that, I think, in a lot of ways.
Right.
How else can I set the agenda than to just talk directly and just constantly tweet at 3:00 in the morning about why Rachel Maddow looks like someone who, it's just that was part and parcel from it. And I mean, that's kind of where we're at now, where there's a lot of overlap in those spaces where they're talking about outvoting that quadrant of social, social right, fiscal left that, people are saying to go for. So, I mean, politics are definitely, it's crazy in both places, to say the least.
I can't believe my tweet blew up about Trump's lawyer, though. That's hilarious.
Which one?
The one about his blonde lawyer that was on Fox News. What's the one Trump tweet? Pervert alert. Was it Don Lemon?
No, I thought it was Brian Stelter. I can't remember.
Yeah, it may have been Brian Stelter. Yeah, pervert alert. Anthony Weiner.
Oh, yeah. Anthony Weiner
is back on Twitter.
Oh my God, this is Trump's lawyer. Okay.
Yeah, that's Trump's lawyer. I think because Anna Kachyan retweeted it, that's why it blew up.
Oh yeah.
But she doesn't want to follow me back. Son of a
Look at this is my lawyer dog, 20 to life.
I don't know. She could be a good lawyer. I don't know.
I loved Grayson Quay's reply. She looks like she could bear a dozen children and then still pick up an axe when the rival clan comes a Viking.
Yeah. No, but that's what I mean. That's like the 80s, like Valkyrie, like Shield Maiden, like look.
Oh yeah, I mean, she looks like she could be an extra on Xena Warrior Princess on like
Yeah,
UPN in the
yeah.
1990s.
Yeah, or she could be like some corporate executive, like, Patrick Bateman type of you guys should review A Face in the Crowd, especially what's going on with Alex. What is A Face in the Crowd?
I
I've never
don't
heard of
know,
this.
but I can
Yeah.
look this up. And then is it the 1957 film? Is that what you're referring to?
Maybe.
Maybe. But
but yeah, like Trump, he didn't. The good thing was he didn't have the nerd affect of Ross Perot, who would like
who would sit down with his charts and bar
Yeah.
graphs and pie charts to explain why like the government is fundamentally insolvent and things need to change.
Yeah. I mean, he was right. I mean, he was kind of like a weirdo, like schizo libertarian.
He did kind of win in the end, though, isn't it? In a lot of ways, I think, just about media appearance.
Yeah.
How well, by win in the end, I mean like pyrrhically prophetic.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's a lot. I feel like it's a lot of the figures that we sort of lionize to kind of bring it full circle. Like,
yeah.
To the rest of the world, these people are the modern day rendition of Cassandra, where what they prophesize will be ignored. But to us out here, whether you're a shape rotator, word cell, theory cell, schizo, whatever you want to call yourself, you
Doomer,
listen,
loner, doomer, incel,
yeah, whatever you want to call yourself. These people have something to say for you, and
exactly. And we will keep saying things and writing things until they take our, to quote,
until someone 200 years from now is like, oh man, this Gio Panischetti character was like, who figured this shit out.
Maybe, I don't know. I was gonna quote the Megadeth lyrics from Holy Wars, until they take my mind away.
Yeah.
The archetype of the fool. I think like the fool mystic is truly the archetype of our current era, and Alex Jones represents that to a T. I think, it is kind of funny.
A fool for Christ, but against globalism.
Yeah, exactly. No, because the fool mystic is sort of like, it does embody our time. And I think like to look at a figure like Alex Jones in archetypal terms is quite interesting. And I think that, the fact that even it's like a jokey meme element to it of like, the fact that conspiracy thinking is sort of like normalized. I think like, even the average like TikToker knows about like, the Illuminati or whatever. Like even like I literally like heard my old man talking to some other like boomer the other day. And the guy's like, that's like the World Economic Forum stuff, and I'm like, whoa, like this is I think like the sort of the media diet of the average boomer is quite interesting now. Yeah.
I mean, even now, right? Like they have access to info that previously would never have been heard of unless they really had to go and find the guy on television or buy the magazine or whatever. And I mean, that's the evolution of really sort of it's an underground mainstream.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, I think is the way to describe it there. But so yeah, Face in the Crowd. Oh, that's an Elia Kazan movie. Okay.
Interesting.
All right. Be sure to. I'll give that one a listen, or I'll give it a watch. But do you want to head on over to what they've sneeded over to us?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Do they wait? Can I do that?
Oh, I can.
Oh, yeah.
It's on my channel.
Sorry.
You're good. You're good.
Super chat time.
So apparently, Default did go on the round table with Mr. Lira. I thought that was interesting.
Oh, wow. She did?
Yeah, she tweeted about it earlier today. Apparently she was talking about the IRS or something.
Nice.
But we'll start the first one off from Zach for £5. He says, I can't understand why you stand. Oh, this might be for you, Gio. Can't understand why you stand Camille Paglia. She exalts Greco-Romans, but insofar their sexual practices also a confirmed Nambla groupie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not totally in the tank for Paglia. I do think that, I do think that it's funny because the bureaucrat tweeted today, Second City bureaucrat, that Paglia sort of is like the cultural critic of America right now. I forget the exact way he worded it. But I do think, I mean, she does have some problematic elements. I don't exactly agree with her take on postmodernism or Michel Foucault. But I think that Paglia was a product of the end of the second wave going to third wave feminism of like, let it all hang out. You got to risk, that Latina, like you got to risk sexual, not to mention the word on Twitter, on YouTube, but like she very much was a product of that like sexual liberation stuff. But I mean, does that discredit her writing? I don't think so. I mean, that's why I still read Michel Foucault, Although I think the Tunisia stuff was kind of like hearsay, but I mean, the stuff he was doing.
You can't deny what he was an advocate for regards to consent laws, but
yeah, I know, but it's just the Tunisia story in particular was from a guy that hated Foucault, and it was just secondhand from an editor, and it was like, but I mean, of course, his thought can lead to having very loose views on things like age of consent. But I think same with Paglia. I think that I don't know if she denounced her Nambla involvement. I have to look it up. But I think like you have to realize that in the 1990s, like not to make an excuse for it, but like this is when they tried to kayfabe a lot of the the horrific stuff that Nambla was involved in. I think that, it may have just been like a transgressive thing. And I know I shouldn't bring this up, but on Twitter recently, with a certain element of the anime racists and their, never mind, starts with a C type.
No.
Yeah, never mind.
Okay.
Never mind. Don't worry about it.
But, I know what you're referring to. Yeah.
yeah. I think that probably she took on that sort of same transgressive thing, but it is same with the certain people we're talking about on Twitter. It's like I don't immediately condemn, even though I don't agree with it. It's just like I know what they're doing as like this transgressive thing, but it's like at the same time, it's like, yeah, I would say, you know what I mean? Like it's like.
It's a crazy time.
Got it. Yeah. God. Oh.
Have fun with that one, Gio.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. Yeah, it's just like, I don't want listen. Okay, I a lot of those guys are very intelligent and they have very interesting things to say, but I know what they're doing when this type of particular posting, and I don't agree with it. I think like even like trads that talk about the age of consent, I think there's kind of like there's sus vibes going on. Okay, there's sus vibes going on. Sus vibes.
Yeah, like who was it? Like Theo Chilton or someone in our circles was talking about like he kind of has to laugh when people want to like ask. And he did a whole thread on the hypothetical of it, and he's just like, I'd be surprised if you losers had like the opportunity to come up and ask me. But he's just like he's like I'm like in my 40s, man. Like just I really I'd be surprised. It's just sort of that cultural divide thing that's so interesting.
Yeah. But I do think that on a purely abstract intellectual level, I do know, like I know it's a form of transgression. I know it's a form of shit posting. I can sort of step back. But it's like, yeah, Gio's trying to avoid the Groiper wrath. Well, yeah, exactly.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, I mean, some of those guys are cool with me, I know. And like I said, a lot of those guys are very insightful, very intelligent. But I mean, when I do see those posts, it's like, I'll scroll through it.
Yeah.
Give me the hot takes about the Tyrannosaurus, not about that. So, scroll right through it. But no, like I said, I got no qualm with the Groiper posters. I think a lot of them are pretty cool, but it's just like certain things just don't. It's like I'm gonna scroll past. I don't want to get involved in any wars. Listen, okay. I know a good friend of mine went toe to toe with BAP recently, and like I am an INFP, I am a mediator. I don't like seeing people fight. I can see the merits in all sides. In other words, and
You're a natural diplomat in that
yeah,
regard.
exactly.
I did like your tweet about it though. You can't post your way out of this one.
You can't post your way to this one, Carl's bad. Listen, you got to realize, okay, and this is the last time I'll say it. Carl's bad. He was always like that, okay? I knew this guy from way back in the day. He's brilliant. I love Carl's bad. I love Carl's bad. But he just rubs people the wrong way, and he admits to it. He knows he rubs people. Carl's bad. If you're listening to this, you rub people the wrong way, bro. You know it. It's just the way you are, and I love you for it. But like I said, I greatly respect and I greatly admire BAP. But I also respect and admire Carlsbad, and so I don't got a dog in the fight. And I respect and admire a lot of these Amarna Forums people. And please, I'm a man of peace. I am a man of peace. And yes, Borzi came up with the term transnecessary. Borzi came up with it. When he was back on Twitter, before he got banned again.
The old times.
The old times, yeah.
The old times.
Geo and I don't know if I'm cool with but listen, here's my final comment on drama. I don't want to incur the ire of anyone. So I choose to ignore drama with certain people. Put it that way.
Yeah,
Bruce, that answers your question about the certain leader, certain guy. Yeah.
And that's important in that regard. Just that playing the role of diplomat or playing the neutral arbiter, it goes a long way. I try my best to do that and not get involved in petty things.
Yeah.
So,
but you gotta admit, a lot of these Amarna Forum people, they're very funny though. They're
fucking hilarious. But at the same time, you're just like, well,
it's like certain things. It's like, oh God, I'm gonna scroll.
I can only chuckle and scroll. But Felix Fairmount for $5 US says, "How does one resolve such abhorrent aesthetics? Beatings. Keep up the good work, gents. You both keep my commute entertaining and interesting." Well, we try to do our best, Felix. Thank you.
Oh, we have to finish the review of Ben Hur soon. So
yes, we do. We do.
El Greco.
I'm gonna have to stream that on Odyssey though.
Yeah, the copyright.
Before I get slammed by Susan. But yeah,
there's all this reaction from paternity tests. Gio's lawyer is hammering it. Oh well, I pay her on retainer, folks. I have the best lawyers.
The best lawyers. We have to get strong jawbone lawyers.
Yeah. Ace and Gio are bringing Zoomer Millennial diplomatic energy. Yeah, me and Ace, we were talking about in the chat last night in the show. So, yeah. I mean, listen. If there was ever a time that I got a chance to talk one-on-one, even though it probably would bring heat upon me, with a certain leader of America First, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think
it'd be worth the opportunity to invoke the ire just for the opportunity to
talk to him,
or interview. Yeah,
if he was willing to be honest with me, then I would do it. Yes, yeah. I would definitely. I wouldn't oppose it. So yeah. Do you have any more super chats, Prude?
Yeah, there's a few more.
All right.
So Helling or Spot for
$10.
Yeah, I know. Thank you so much for your donation. Great stream. Any advice on how to do rudimentary network on hard mode? I am in a deep blue land, and the people that would click might betray me, and over Shibboleth makes getting burned so much easier. So this question gets asked a lot. And I think
move.
Yeah, well,
no,
move if you can, right? But I mean, no. If you're in your area, you've got your family, your kids, whatever you're doing. Don't make it explicitly political when you're like searching things out. Go to things where your hobbies or your interests are probably going to be aligned with your views politically. I mean, if you have a hobby or a disposable income, that usually helps a lot. Or even just making one or hosting one yourself. I mean, it takes a form of triage to do it. So I mean, like, I wouldn't go full base and red pill right out of the gate when talking to a group of people, but I mean, slowly getting a feel for them helps. I mean, Wargaming is a great way to do it because that's typically more of an older man's hobby that isn't going to necessarily have sort of shit libs everywhere. I mean, sports is sort of a really intramural way. I mean, most of the guys that I used to play pool with all the time back when I lived in El Paso, we shared very similar views, although it was never like explicitly mentioned. So, I mean, it requires a lot of caution and prudence of forethought because, like, yeah, like if you have a professional job or, things like that that could get you burned, you do have to play careful. But I mean, like, look for hobbies first. And
hobbies
then
and crafts,
hobbies and crafts. I mean, like, go towards the traditional masculine hobbies and crafts that men do. So I mean,
and
if
it
you're in
has
an
a lot
area,
of boomers in it as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
Older men, like if there's like a hodgepodge of older men, they will probably, I don't know how old you are here, Helic, but I mean, like if you're a younger guy, maybe like late 20s, early 30s, and like it's just a crowd of boomers that are hiking or whatever, odds are they'll take you in. And
even if you live in a blue city, even if like there's older gay men involved, older gay men particularly, I mean, they will have like semi-based opinions compared to like the younger ones, you know what I mean? But that's just because they live in a different time. But like, yeah, hobbies are good. Here's a secret though. If you're in a professional setting, this is what
most of my friends have been boomers, so that's a good
go.
to know.
That's a good start. See if they also have daughters that you can potentially marry as well.
You have to learn to hide your power level as well.
Yeah. Especially if their daughter is secretly racist, that is also a good in. But no. Josh Neal told me this. Here's the secret to getting canceled. If you are in a professional setting, especially in academia, but most especially in academia, it is the people around you that will cancel you. Or what they will do is they will, how like a lot of right wingers that were in academia got doxxed, like AA or Josh Neal himself, is because they knew people, or rather the people in their faculty that don't like them. They have given docs information because a lot of their students have rubbed shoulders with the anti-people, anti-F word. So that is the secret to getting canceled. It isn't that they find you, it's that people around you, for academic, petty, professional, political bullshit reasons, not even just that they disagree with you politically, that's just an excuse. It's because they want to knock you off for the next tenure round. That's usually what it is. That's what happened to Josh Neal, actually. It's people that want to get ahead of you in the game of academia, that they have students that have blue hair and that volunteer for whatever X city anti they'll give you your information. That's how, and I've known professors who've been stabbed in the back professionally by these.
So that would be another good piece of advice is like make friends with people outside your professional circle.
Yeah. I think AA was forced to dox himself, if I recall. I forget what happened.
I don't know the full story of it, so I don't want to like speak out of turn.
But, me neither. Yeah.
And he's on vacation anyways. But I mean, like, stay outside of your like class of like where people who aren't going to be like bloodthirsty ladder climbers and careerists. That'll help a lot. Hiding your power level, hanging out with older people, like you said, most of your friends have been boomers. That's a good thing to have. I mean, they'll typically point you in the right direction. But I mean, also, like, if you hear people complain, it's like, oh, like I don't agree with them. They're not like left wing or whatever. I mean, sometimes the places that people complain about can also be a place for friends. But I mean, it's difficult, I know. And I mean, it does require a certain degree of trust and triage before. But again, that also requires you to just not be like saying the most based things that you believe in when you go have someone over for dinner or whatever,
Yeah,
like
you gotta. Really
you have to be careful.
Yeah. Nick Larson, loved the Josh Neal pod. By the way, Gio got me through work today. Oh, thank you. And also Nick Larson donated. But if you have any more before that,
there was one subject to change for $5 US. Just sent a super sticker which has a little cat twirling around.
Sean Weiland, fun fact: Asians are super racist in private. Well, that's true. That is true.
Well, yeah, because they hate every other Asian on Earth.
Oh boy.
But yeah, Nick Larson for $4.99 US says, I don't have a question, just appreciate the content. Hope you guys keep this up. Loving the combo. God bless you both.
Thank you, Nick.
Well, Nick, we
Thank
thank you.
you.
I'm very, very, very
Yeah.
grateful. This has been a fantastic project, and I really do. I'm gonna just do this on air just to give Gio a hard time, but like Gio's been around for forever, and I'm very blessed and very happy that he's sort of like taken me in, and
Yeah.
it's been very good in that regard. I've been very
Oh,
blessed
thank
just
you.
to be around, not just with you, but with everybody in the last 2 years of doing this stuff. It's
Yeah.
mind blowing where my name has been said in other places. So I'm very, very thankful for that. So
Yeah.
again, Nick, we're very blessed for that. But I think we're gonna wrap it up there. We'll be over next Thursday on Gio's channel. But before we finally sign off, Gio, is there anything that you would like to promote?
Yeah, I don't know if it's recording or if it's live, but tomorrow I'm on the Blood Satellite podcast, and
You'll
on
be recording.
okay, good. Then on Tuesday I'm recording with Scott Marion, his Greenwood channel, talking about Heidegger and the work of art. And then also I think I'm recording next week as well with my good friend Goran and Michael. They have the War Report podcast. So that's going to be great. Going to be shilling all of that. I don't know what content minded I'm going to do next week. I might release, I think I'll probably release, because they're doing that conference, the Wheelwright and
Oh, nice.
what's his name? The other homesteader, the Catholic one. I can't believe my mind is a blank right now. Michael Scott. Oh my God, Michael. What's his last name?
I can't tell you.
The Catholic Back to the Land movement.
I know I know what the movement is. I just don't know him specifically.
Michael.
So yeah, recording with. You'll record. Hopefully, you'll have Judas on as well. Because when I was on, I only had Dimes, but Judas has been busy trying to get the heck out of China.
yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
So yeah, they've had a crazy time over there. Our Canadian friends.
Michael Thomas of Sharon. Yes, Michael Thomas of Sharon.
There you go.
Yeah. So I'm gonna release that one. So he's got on his property, he's doing this Back to the Land Catholic movement conference, I believe either next week or the week after. And so I'm probably going to release that episode. It's with my good friend Will Wheelwright, and they both talk about the spiritual implications of homesteading and Back to the Land movement. It's going to be amazing. So a lot of content. What do you have up, by the way, Prude, content-wise?
So yeah, that's why I use the word promote, because shilling just sounds so like. Ugh.
Oh, and yes, the Josh Neal episode. Go to my channel for the free version. The full 4 hours is on Patreon.com. And as always, I'm plowing my way on the content, giant art reviews. Plowing my way through Byung-Chul Han's Psychopolitics. I'm halfway through the book. There's been 3 episodes. All of them are almost 2 hours a piece, or an hour and a half. Every Sunday or Monday, I release them. And after this, I believe I'm probably going to do another Byung-Chul Han book. His most recent one, which I pre-ordered, coming out the 29th of August this month. So I believe it's called Digitocracy or something like that. I have to look.
No, very nice.
Yeah. So I'm probably going to... A patron of mine requested it. I recently also got another $50 patron. So I'm in the process of mailing out all of the artist prints for everybody of the $20 and upwards. So so that's
exciting. Well, that's fantastic, man. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So I've had a very busy this week and last week that I'm gonna have to put a post like on Substack together just so I have everything directed. But so all right, things that you can all find me on, or what I've got planned ahead. I did a talk with a gentleman called Can of Tea. We talked about Ron DeSantis for a little bit, which you can get my take on Ron DeSantis there. I talked with Lamprey Milt over at the American Sun on his channel. These are all in the community tab. We talked about energy. We talked about some various cultural goings on and sort of just where things are going in regards to resources, which was a very interesting talk. Him and his co-host were really nice to me. They were very gracious to have me on as a guest. Tomorrow, I'll be on Praise of Folly's channel at 4 p.m. Eastern. We're going to talk about some of the policy positions that were taken over the last 50 years that America kind of led itself to be in direct power competition with China. Saturday, I don't think I have anything planned
China.
I do
China,
have
final warning.
basically. I do have some Substack stuff out that I need to finish and get out this week. There'll be 2 of them for sure. And then Sunday we'll be talking about that Royal Armed Services article you sent me, Gio. We're going to talk about that and the return of industrial warfare and globalization. And then the Friday after that, I'll be talking with James Pierce over the Patriarchy podcast. They're a bunch of ortho bros, so that'll be a fun time talking about modernism. So as always, just stay tuned. All of our links are down below. You can support me on Subscribestar. You can support Gio on Patreon. Everything's linked down below. So until then, we'll see you next Thursday on Gio's channel. I wish you the very best. Have the great rest of your week.
God bless and goodbye. And to answer Robin's questions on Patreon, where I talked to Gonzalo the night I left, So God bless.
I wondered where that went.
Yeah, I had to private it because it was too personal.
Understandable. But all right, gents, we'll see you all next week, guys. Take care.